Chapter 1611. What happened between Hirogwa and Dopey actually wasn't a secret in Grade 1, Class 3. Dopey the parrot had the ability to turn into a human because of its bloodline. Wang Ling had used the Great Blood Origin spell to track it down. But for Dopey to turn into a human, it needed to gather the spirit chi of heaven and earth, and under certain conditions, which was a little like a werewolf's reaction to seeing the moon. As for continuing to turn into a human, it was basically impossible. The animalization incident resulted in a polar reversal between cultivators and spirit beasts and animals. When animals and spirit beasts turned into humans, cultivators instead obtained some of the characteristics of animals or spirit beasts, and directly turned into animals. This matter sounded too inconceivable. But there was one thing that was certain now. Hirogwa was definitely feeling good, because Dopey's human form had always been that of a domineering elder sister. The most important thing was, it wasn't any smaller than Jiang Luiying's back then. It was definitely the type that Ryoko Kamiya would be envious of. There weren't many people in class to begin with. The animalization incident this time had directly reduced the number of people in class by more than half. Apart from people like Hirogwa who had been trapped at home by Dopey and couldn't come out, the other people's situations were even more serious. They had directly turned into animals or spirit beasts, and thus couldn't come out. For example, Jiang Yingying. Jiang Yingying's condition was said to be very serious. When she woke up, she had directly turned into a carp. When Marshal Jiang had found out, poor Jiang Yingying had been lying in his bed, and her life had almost been in danger. This made Wang Ling feel uneasy. After all, the monthly exams were coming up. If things didn't return to normal before the monthly exams, it would probably affect his rhythm of keeping his grades down. Wang Ling, I didn't expect you to still have rabbit ears, just like yesterday, Super Chin said as he pinched Wang Ling's ear. When he saw this scene, he began to suspect that the animalization phenomenon had already begun yesterday. Compared with Wang Ling, Super Chen's change actually wasn't that big. In addition to the horns and tail, Super Chen's nose had also changed a little. Sure enough, Wang Ling. I wasn't wrong about you. At that moment, Super Chen spoke again. Wang Ling, ? Super Chen. It's said that this only happens to cultivators below the nascent soul stage, and the lower the realm, the more severe the animalization. I've always suspected that you were hiding some sort of strength. From the looks of it now, I was thinking too much. Wang Ling, on the side, Gu Xuanji, Jin Yuan and the others blushed with shame. Then, he quickly tried to smooth things over for Wang Ling. Student Wang Ling is just a mascot. Of course he can't be above the nascent soul stage. Not bad, look at classmate Wang Ling's rabbit ears, they're so cute. He doesn't look like a senior at all. Have you ever seen any expert who likes to eat crispy noodle snacks? In just a few words, Super Chin was left speechless. It couldn't be helped, the entire Grade 1, Class 3 was now filled with moles sent by the war sect. It was precisely because of this invisible benefit. The animalization incident didn't affect Gu Xuanji, Jin Yuan, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, Fang Xing and the others at number 60 high school. Before coming to school, they had more or less disguised themselves so that they didn't look too strange. As for Lotus Sun, thanks to the protection of the mysterious sea sword Qi, she also managed to escape. But in order to come to school, she still disguised herself. Like yesterday, she had a snow-white and fluffy nine-tailed foxtail behind her. It was just that there were clearly fewer people around her today. The animalization incident had come too suddenly, and for a moment, many people had panicked. For example, Lotus Sun had received dozens of text messages asking for help from Grey Sect disciples today. That was because the animalization was already bothering them. Some disciples had also turned into sea creatures like Jiang Yingying and were trapped at home, unable to move, so they could only ask for help via voice connection. Although the Grey Sect had grown a lot both at home and abroad, it was still the same as before. But Lotus Sun felt that everyone seemed to have misunderstood something. When all was said and done, the Grace sect was just a literary exchange club. But unity and love were the motto of the Grace sect, and since the disciples needed help, Lotus Sun naturally couldn't refuse. As the sect leader, she and Sun Yinger had been on the move early in the morning when the animalization incident had begun to ferment, going door to find disciples who needed help. As a result, when she came to class in the morning, Lotus Sun looked a little tired. Although there was still the double sugar milk candy in the pencil case from Wang Ling. But even in this situation, she still couldn't bear to eat it. And now, those text messages asking for help were still pouring in on her phone. Wang Ling frowned slightly at this scene. The essence of the Grace sect's existence was to provide cover for him. To put it bluntly, its function was the same as Audiobook's, it was just that the nature was different. Audiobook could make him the scapegoat for dealing with vicious incidents. And the Grace sect's existence could provide cover for him when he participated in large-scale competitions with many people in the future. If it was all his own people in a competition, even if Wang Ling's performance was a little in the limelight, as long as they kept quiet, there wouldn't be too much of a splash. Now that the Grace sect was growing in scale, as the leader and organizer, Lotus Sun had worked hard and made great contributions. No matter how wooden Wang Ling was, he could still see it. Originally, the milk candy with double the sugar content yesterday was a form of repayment. It was originally meant to relieve her fatigue. Previously, he had also given her an extra sack of gunny. But Wang Ling didn't know that Lotus Sun couldn't bear to eat it at all. Not only couldn't she bear to eat it, she also gave it insurance. Wang Ling was puzzled no matter how he thought about it. There was nothing he could do. In order to relieve the pressure on Lotus Sun's work, Wang Ling decided to resolve the matter at hand as soon as possible. Originally, he hadn't wanted to do it himself. At noon, Wang Ling found an opportunity to go to the school rooftop again. This was originally the scene of the Shadow Stream killers being turned into dregs by the backlash. Since Shadow Stream's invasion of No. 60 High School, it had now become a famous scenic spot in No. 60 High School, and a lot of people usually came to the rooftop to eat together. Wang Ling basically didn't come up. Today, he had asked Jin Deng to use his power as the vice headmaster to issue a ban before he dared to go up. At that moment, Wang Ling gazed at the sky. He poured spirit power into his king's eye and unleashed his divine power, shooting an invisible light into the clouds. Very quickly, a torrential downpour fell all over the world. This heavy rain was mixed with the magic power of Wang Ling's great purification spell, which could directly eliminate this anomaly. In the process of the rain spreading down, the magic power would spread along with the flow of the air, taking care of everyone who was affected by the rain. And so, it was over, but Wang Ling's expression didn't relax. He had a hunch. It felt like this was just the beginning. At the moment when the purifying rain fell, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. In a secret underground laboratory in Songhai City, a middle-aged man with disheveled hair was abruptly awakened by a loud explosion. Just now, his dashboard had exploded. Finally found it, the middle-aged man said excitedly at that moment. Chapter 1612. Today was actually the 3rd anniversary of Shouchung's Grand Unlimited Energy Plan. Everything had started when he had picked up that black meteorite the size of a grain of sand. That day, Shouchung had named that small meteorite, Eternity. To this day, all his efforts had been for the sake of developing an unlimited energy source that would make the entire Earth. And even the greatest scientist in the history of cultivation. After Lotus Sun and Kamiya Ryoko had raised 20 billion yuan for his research and development, Shouchung had upgraded the equipment in his underground laboratory and was even more determined to achieve his goal. But now, his research and development had hit a bottleneck. The most important part of the Grand Unlimited Energy Plan was to find a container that could provide perpetual motion energy. For this reason, Shouchung had set his sights on an infinite secret realm. According to ancient records, this mysterious infinite secret realm contained the materials he could use to make a perpetual motion container. But it wasn't easy to open this secret realm. He had spent a huge sum of money to hire a team of 100 soul formation cultivators to create an array for condensing spirit power in the depths of the desert. Unfortunately, the strength of these 100 people was far from enough. Tearing open a crack in the infinite secret realm was more difficult than Shochong had imagined. Thus, he had launched the animalization plan for cultivators just a few days ago. According to Shochong's personality tests and calculations, it seemed that the big shots of the cultivation world generally like to pretend to be ordinary people and live low-key lives in seclusion. If his calculations were correct, once the collective lives of human cultivators were shaken, these big shots whose lives had been disrupted definitely wouldn't sit idly by and do nothing. Of course, this was just Shochong's wishful thinking. Even he hadn't expected the whole plan to go so smoothly. In the laboratory, the assistants whom Shochong had hired began to use their private satellites to locate the spirit power signal just now. The private satellites showed that it was number 60 high school. What a familiar high school name. One of the assistants frowned. It's that legendary high school. The legendary Audiobook. I saw an interview with him a while ago. He said that he's been obsessed with a washboard recently, and everyone is still debating what that means, another assistant said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Because of Audiobook's words, the price of washboards on the market had skyrocketed. A lot of cultivators thought that washboards could help with cultivation, so after Audiobook's exclusive interview was broadcast, all the washboards in supermarkets and online shops were snapped up. Basically, everyone was researching how the washboard could be used for cultivation. In the information age of the internet, as long as one had a little bit of fame, their every move would bring about a huge impact. For Wang Ling, Audiobook's public appearance was actually a good thing. After all, they were his tools. Something was not right. It was a disciple. His own disciple was shining brightly outside, and everyone's attention was focused on him. Naturally, it had a certain hidden effect on him. For example, now. When Shochong realized that the energy he was tracking was coming from number 60 high school, he immediately held a short meeting with the assistants in the laboratory. What do you think of this matter? Shochong asked. I think we should categorize the discussion according to the situation. Although the energy source is from number 60 high, we can't rule out the possibility that a big shot was passing by, an assistant said. It's unlikely that they're just passing by. I think they're from number 60 high. Another assistant took out the satellite map he had taken, and when he zoomed in on the image, it happened to show number 60 high school's rooftop. In the end, there were actually traces of mosaics. Furthermore, Shochong's current technology was unable to fully analyze this mosaic, and he didn't know what it originally was. If it's just an almighty passing by, they probably wouldn't do this. In any case, they don't know anyone, so why deliberately mosaic themselves? Don't they usually wear masks or something? For example, an Uchiha swordsman, the assistant said. What the hell is an Uchiha swordsman? Isn't it an Uchiha swordsman? The two assistants discussed it. This kind of behavior was indeed a little like burying one's head in the sand. Shochong rubbed his chin. From a behavioral point of view, if this person was from number 60 high school and didn't want anyone to know who he was. Now, Shochong had his first suspect. Do you think this person is Audiobook? Shochong asked. I don't think so. Audiobook is at the height of his fame now, and who knows how many eyes are watching him. If it's not him, how can he explain his frequent leapfrogging battles all these years, and solving many major problems that couldn't have been solved at his realm? There's always been a rumor that he has a shifu. I don't think he has a shifu. Shochong shook his head and said, I'm afraid that showing off his abilities outside is actually a kind of reverse thinking. It's to make others think that he has a powerful shifu behind him, and that's why he's so fearless. But what if he's that Shifu? Teacher, are you saying that Audjua and the Shifu behind the rumors are the same person? I don't think that's a possibility. Thanks to Detective Conan's theatrical version as well as various domestic mystery dramas, Shochong had a strong reasoning ability. In his heart, Shochong was almost certain that this legendary Shifu was a smokescreen that Audjua had deliberately released. And Audjua himself was in fact a powerful almighty. A true immortal. And that true venerated sect leader of Battle Sect was even more powerful. But if the above reasoning was completely accurate, then what Shochong had to think about next was how to establish a connection with Audjua. Has there been any useful information on this Audjua recently? Shochong asked at that moment. Information. I have a lot of gossip magazines here. The assistant rummaged through a drawer and took out some weekly gossip magazines. Magazines are fine too. Shochong nodded. A lot of the time, the information in gossip magazines wasn't necessarily fake. The key was how to distinguish between truth and falsehood. Shochong cupped his chin in his hand as he read several magazines in a row on his desk. Finally, he discovered an interesting piece of information. It was gossip about a late-night tryst between Audjua and a mysterious young woman. But unfortunately, this reporter hadn't been able to get a picture of the woman's face. But Shochong frowned. The more he looked at this young woman, the more familiar she seemed. This chest, this almost limitless scale, it was as if he had seen it somewhere before. A moment later, Shochong suddenly slapped his head. Ryoko Kiyomiya. It's her. That was right. Based on these characteristics alone, as well as the sensitivity of an otaku who had been single for many years, Shochong recognized Ryoko Kiyomiya. This was easy to handle. Shochong couldn't help covering his mouth and smiling. He immediately took out his cell phone, ready to text Ryoko Kiyomiya to confirm the authenticity of the information. Shochong's contact information for Ryoko Kiyomiya was, Flat Princess. Chapter 1613. After the Kamiya family incident was resolved, all the pressure and uneasiness on Haruko Nakahara's shoulders were completely lifted. She didn't want to betray Kamiya Yoshiko, but because her only family was being threatened, she was constantly being used by the Kamiya family. When Kamiya Yoshiko discovered the clues, Haruko Nakahara wanted to kill herself and bid farewell to the world. But for Kamiya Yoshiko, Haruko Nakahara had a different meaning. She wasn't just her female bodyguard. She was also her friend and family who had grown up with her. After her suicide attempt, Haruko Nakahara was back on track after a period of adjustment. Although Shochong's phone number was Flatboard Princess, it was actually just a work phone number. Haruko Nakahara would recheck all work calls to confirm that they weren't scams or blackmail messages before passing them on. It's Master Shochong. He said that the magic treasure that can trace the dead fish-eyed teenager has been developed. He hopes Miss Yoshiko can meet him in private. In Kamiya Yoshiko's villa, Haruko Nakahara stood respectfully by the luxurious leather sofa. Today was a rare day for Kamiya Yoshiko to go home. After all, she usually lived at Audjua's place. This time, she mainly packed some clothes and daily necessities. Kamiya Yoshiko had already decided to move in with Audjua. She was in a good mood when she heard Junko's words. Only then did she remember that she had indeed invested 5 billion in Shochong's research. But for Kamiya Yoshiko, finding that dead fish-eyed teenager didn't seem important anymore. In order to find that dead fish-eyed teenager, she had wanted to prove that Audjua was a liar. But now, it was no longer necessary. That's not important anymore. Junko, go tell Master Shochong that he has worked hard. Kamiya Yoshiko tidied up her long, silky hair and replied after careful thought. Haruko Nakahara was stunned. Then the 5 billion, give it to him. People have to pay for their willfulness. After saying that, Kamiya Yoshiko's cheeks glowed slightly. Haruko Nakahara was speechless. Was this the legendary, inhuman tycoon? She didn't want it at all. However, with the abundant wealth of the Jogong family and the successful cooperation with the Huaguo Water Curtain Group, although the news had not been announced to the public yet, 5 billion was indeed not a big deal right now. It could be considered as a subsidy for the technological development of human cultivators. In fact, every year, the Jogong family would allocate a large sum of money to those talented and knowledgeable scientists in the cultivation world to conduct research. Some studies were successful, but most of them were failures. If she just wanted to give back to society, Ryoko Kamiya didn't care about the money at all. At this time, Kusakusa loosened the call and said with an apologetic smile, "So, Master Shochong, did you hear me?" "Shochong, that's not it, Miss Junko. That's a research fund of 5 billion. 5 billion. You really don't want it anymore?" Springgrass Shongchuan said, "I'm sorry, Master Shochong. This is Mrs. Decision. If you are worried that the Kugong family will go back on their words, Miss Kugong said that we can draft another research termination and donation agreement. She will also state that it is because of her personal reasons, and it will not affect your reputation." The call was cut off. Shochong sat down in his chair, disappointed and frustrated, unable to calm down for a long time. She just said no to the 5 billion. This was something Shochong had never expected. "Teacher, this Jogong family is too generous. What should we do now?" After the plan was disrupted, the assistants in the lab all looked at a loss. One of the assistants suddenly thought of something and said, "How about we try exchanging information?" "Exchange information?" Shochong was puzzled. Isn't eldest Miss Jogong Ryoko of the Jogong family at odds with the eldest Miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group? I think we might as well use this piece of gossip to make a deal with eldest Miss Sunday. Then, we can have Miss Sun come forward and give us a chance to meet Mr. Zhuo alone. The assistant said, that Legend Shui is her senior to begin with. That's a good idea. Shochong nodded. He felt that what this assistant said made a lot of sense. After all, in order to oppose Ryoko Kamiya, Lotus Sun had given him 15 billion yuan. Shochong heard that even the core members of the group had noticed it at that time, and had even signed a VAM. If the magic treasure research suffered a loss, Lotus Sun would give up her inheritance. Compared with Ryoko Kamiya, Lotus Sun actually had no other way out, and she couldn't just give up this money. Shochong felt that this might be an opportunity. So he quickly took out his phone and looked up Lotus Sun's number from his contact list. Name note: Father Lotus Sunday, Master Shochong's magic treasure has already been developed, right? That's great. Lotus Sun's dignified laughter came from the other end of the line. Even through the screen, Shochong could imagine the girl sitting upright on the sofa and drinking tea as she talked to him on the phone. Yes, eldest Miss Sun, my research is very reliable. It can perfectly counter Miss Jogong's request to develop a magic treasure that can find dead fish eyes. This is a projection magic treasure with a radiation function. It's called the Phantom Projector. Shochong introduced it. You need to wear an earring as a receiver, and through the magic treasure in my hand, you can change your face to whatever you want. You can even customize the face of a celebrity. My research team has already upgraded the core chip, and ordinary transfiguration detection equipment can't detect the face that has been modified by the Phantom Projector. That's pretty good. It sounds very practical. Lotus Sun nodded. In this era of beauty cameras and all kinds of magical makeup techniques, the appearance of such a phantom projector was absolutely a blessing to society as a whole. Lotus Sun's original purpose in having Shochong develop the magic treasure was indeed to target Ryoko Kamiya. But she hadn't expected that the thing Shochong had developed this time would unexpectedly have a selling point. Miss, you flatter me, this is what we should do. Shoucheng smiled, and then moved on to the next topic. It's like this, Miss Lotus Sun, I've come to you for another matter. What is it? I have some information about eldest Miss Jiugong. I wonder if Miss Lotus Sun would be interested. Of course, in exchange for the information, we have certain conditions. You mean information about Ryoko Kamiya? Yes. Oh, then I'm not interested. Lotus Sun smiled. And Ryoko is a good person. There's basically nothing fancy about the information. Shoucheng stared blankly. Weren't the two of you at loggerheads? Chapter 1614. Facts had proven that a woman's thinking could not be judged by common sense. Although Shoucheng was obsessed with his laboratory and all kinds of strange inventions, he was not a woman. However, in order to earn research funding and successfully sell his invention, Shoucheng's status in the circle of rich women was also there. A long, long time ago, he was also known as the Lady Killer. If it weren't for his age, he wouldn't have been able to withstand the lethality of the steel wire bowl. Shoucheng felt that he could still fight for another 500 years. Therefore, he became an internet celebrity and created virtual economic value by creating online videos to spread his invention. This was Shoucheng's last resort. The target of his research fees had changed from middle-aged women to rich young ladies like Ryoko Kamiya and Lotus Sunday. It was true that the young ladies were rich. But in the heart of a young girl in puberty, Shoucheng found himself unable to figure it out. Of course, it could also be because he was once obsessed with women. That was why his thinking was so rigid. On the contrary, he was unable to understand the thoughts of these young ladies. After ending the call with Lotus Sun, Shoucheng also complained about how strange this matter was. What the hell? They were clearly scheming against each other just a while ago. Wasn't this reconciliation a little too fast? This time, his plan to get in touch with Lotus Sun and thus contact Audjua had also failed. Shoucheng felt that he had indeed been a little rash in his actions. Taking action through Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kamiya had changed his mind. After contacting both sides, Shoucheng began to have a vague intuition. He felt that these two ladies might be in the same boat now. If that was the case, it would be very dangerous to get a chance to meet Audjua in exchange for revealing dirt on Ryoko Kamiya. With his strength alone, it was impossible for him to contend against the eldest daughters of two major corporations. Looks like there's only one other way. Shoucheng sighed silently. The assistants in the laboratory were also shocked and turned pale. Could it be that teacher wants to? We can only take out our trump card. As long as we can establish contact with number 60 high, finding Audjua will only be a matter of minutes. Shoucheng lit a cigarette and put it in his mouth, then said, also, we can kill two birds with one stone by screening and see if there are any students from number 60 high who are hiding very deeply. December 23rd, Wednesday, one day after the animalization of cultivators. Overall, Wang Ling's study life returned to normal. Although there were still some people who didn't come to school, it didn't matter. It was said that number 60 high had specially sent several teams of psychology teachers to give psychological counseling to these students who had completely turned into animals. Super Chen was extremely envious. Ah! The director of the psychotherapy room, Yang Hanin, was very beautiful. Old Gua is really lucky. When he heard that teacher Yang was going to visit Hirogua's home, he had been hyping it up in class since the morning self-study session. Hirogua was clearly the most comfortable person in the animal transformation incident. He was playing whip and candle at home with his mature sister, Dan, who had taken human form. He was so happy that he didn't want to go to school. It wasn't because he was traumatized. Super Chen crossed his arms in righteous indignation as he spoke loudly in class. Wang Ling wiped at his sweat on the side. If it had been anyone else, he might not have believed it. But coming from Super Chen, the result was different. For the first time in this morning's class, Old Pan did not ask to memorize the talisman formula as soon as she entered the room. Instead, she held a stack of notices and asked Little Peanut to help hand them out. National Cultivation College Ranking System Update Notice. The gray notice was stamped with the school's black steel stamp, and the huge title instantly caught everyone's eyes. As you can see, the ranking system of all the cultivation colleges in the country is about to be updated. Standing on the dais, Old Pan said to everyone, there will be tests on 5 dimensions: consciousness, strength, speed, knowledge, and chi and blood, and then a comprehensive evaluation. The results will be published on the list. Everyone will then be able to see your ranking in real time. Wang Ling stared at the notice. He somehow felt that the contents of these dimension tests were a little familiar. After all, he had just recently taken the test in Outer God's Palace. Furthermore, the values were all positive infinity. If number 60 high was going to do this test now, Wang Ling instantly felt that something was wrong. At that moment, someone raised their hand. Teacher, are our rankings on the same list as those of Golden Core University students? The high school rankings and the university rankings are independent. But they can also be used as a reference for future promotions. Students with higher rankings will definitely have an easier time getting promoted, so I hope everyone can pay attention to this. Teacher Pan said, but the system hasn't been updated so soon, and is currently still in the internal testing stage. The Alliance of 10,000 Schools is currently bidding for a suitable testing system for science companies all over the country. It needs to be tested by a number of high schools before it can be rolled out nationwide. So that's how it is. Everyone nodded. Looking at the notice in his hand, Wang Ling finally understood what it meant. It looked like the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had already received submissions from several technology companies. It seemed that number 60 high was going to test out one of the testing systems to see if the entire testing system could work properly. Of course. What Wang Ling was most concerned about wasn't the testing system itself. Instead, it was the person who had developed it. Everyone, have you seen the notice? The system that our school has been assigned is the masterpiece of that very popular online scientist, Master Shouchong. Although that was what Old Pan said, her heart was actually as calm as an ancient well. If you listened carefully, you might even feel that there was a hint of sarcasm in her words. She had never paid attention to internet celebrities, and had even less interest in Shouchong. As for the title of master, it was just out of politeness. What no one knew was that Old Pan actually hated Shouchong a lot. It was not because of Shouchong's strange inventions. It was because of the inventions that Shouchong had relied on back then to deceive several of her female friends. Thus, Shouchong's testing system had been assigned to number 60 high. Thus, Old Pan felt that she had found a way to take revenge. At that moment, she stood on the dais and said indignantly, "Students, I hope everyone will cooperate and take part in the test this time. Who can discover the bug in this system? You can choose not to write from memory later on. Plus a big mysterious gift bag for the teacher in charge. I guarantee it's worth it. I'm sure every student here will want it. Big gift bag. Don't tell me it's homework." Someone couldn't help laughing. "I guarantee on my honor that it's not homework." Teacher Pan smiled. "Also, there are a lot of gift certificates in the gift bag." Gift certificates. For example, it's not called a parent certificate. As long as it's not a heinous mistake of principle, you can avoid having your parents come to school with this certificate. For example, a coupon for number 60 high's canteen. With this certificate, you can enjoy a super discount of 198 yuan off the school canteen if you spend 200 yuan. Student Wang Ling, your favorite crispy noodle snacks. You can use this certificate to fight for it. To be honest, Wang Ling hadn't planned to cooperate in finding bugs at first. However, the preferential treatment was simply too much. Chapter 1615. Looking for bugs wasn't Wang Ling's specialty. Since Shoucheng had the confidence to test this system at number 60 high, there shouldn't be any particular problems with it. At the moment, this system was only being tested internally for number 60 high school. But if they wanted to promote it to the whole country in the future, the system's carrying capacity and endurance were issues that needed to be considered. To put it bluntly, he needed stability. Therefore, as long as the system was unstable, the system would not be stable. In that case, the alliance of 10,000 schools would not consider Shoucheng's system. In other words, he actually didn't need to look for bugs at all. As long as the system reflected the unstable factors, it would be fine. As a weak young man who was usually crowned with the title of a mascot. Until now, a lot of people still felt that Wang Ling had been lucky during the senior grade 1 entrance test. That was why there was a bug in the test result. In the end, he was assigned to the elite class. Over the past half a year, they had also represented the elite class and fought for the glory of the school. But it was still hard to dispel some people's dissatisfaction with Wang Ling. Hence, Wang Ling's test results. A lot of people at number 60 high didn't believe it at all. Even if he performed a little better, it didn't seem to be a problem. Moreover, with the help of the Great Church's disciples, the overall risk was very small. He was right. Wang Ling's current idea wasn't to look for bugs at all. He decided to break Shoucheng's testing system. In any case, this was number 60 high's internal test, and everyone would cover for him. Even if he performed better than usual. In the end, the problem would be attributed to the instability of the testing system and good luck. In essence, this was also related to some people's deep-rooted psychological shortcomings. They would rather believe that they were lucky than believe that someone else was strong. To these people, acknowledging a person's excellence. It was really difficult. Teacher Pan didn't like Shoucheng because of his black history of swindling people. No one else knew about this. But Wang Ling was clear in his heart. He didn't mean to eavesdrop on old Pan's thoughts. It was just that old Pan had been nagging non-stop in her heart when she was sending out the notice. It seemed like there was indeed a deep hatred between them. Of course, there were people who hated it, and there were also people who supported it. As a current online celebrity, Shoucheng had a lot of fans at number 60 high school. Among the students and teachers, there were fans of his. These people were collectively known as Shouchue. Hearing that this testing system was developed by Shoucheng naturally would not let go of this opportunity. They started to forward the ridiculous inventions that Shoucheng had published on the internet in the school forum in Tiaba. In contrast, Wang Ling appeared especially calm. He was not interested in being an internet celebrity. Moreover, he also felt that Shoucheng's inventions were very boring. After all, there was a man who was much stronger than Shoucheng by his side. In fact, even Shoucheng himself did not expect this. Before Wang Ming had returned from Sun Island, he had already been monitored by Wang Ming. For example, Wang Ling now saw Wang Ming send him a series of messages. Number 60 high. Does he really think he pulled strings to get number 60 high to be his test site? Of course it was specially arranged by my side. Furthermore, he is the mastermind behind the animalization incident. There's no doubt about it. I calculated according to the coordinates and finally located his underground laboratory. I've also deduced that the reason he did this is probably related to his next experiment. Of course, the reason why I know so much information is not only because of this investigation. Mainly because there are people from the Great Church in his team. When Wang Ling saw Wang Ming's last message, he was dumbfounded. The scale of his Great Church, had it already expanded to this extent? It was really a little outrageous. If there were people from the Great Church around Shoucheng. Furthermore, they knew so much information. Then it was extremely likely that they were Shoucheng's assistants. but Wang Ming's words were reassuring to Wang Ling. Because at this point, roping in Shoucheng was already as easy as pie. Next, he just had to wait for Shoucheng to fall into the pit he had dug himself. Apart from Wang Ling, Wang Ming also informed Lotus Sun about Wang Ming's follow-up deployment plans for Shoucheng. The girl was meticulous and considerate, so Wang Ming actually felt more at ease leaving the matter to Lotus Sun to handle. Brother Ming, don't worry. Ling Ling's business is my business. Lotus Sun hung up the phone in the student union office. To avoid the call being monitored, Wang Ming had specially used a landline when he contacted Lotus Sun, and connected her remotely through brainwaves. Given Wang Ming's current ability to radiate brainwaves, it wasn't difficult for him to cover an entire city. Coupled with a helmet that increased the range of his radiation, Wang Ming's brainwaves could reach every corner of the world. But the downside was also very obvious. Wang Ming couldn't maintain it for too long at the moment. Radiating the entire world would take less than 5 minutes before he had to think of a way to cool down his brain. Otherwise, Jai Yin would definitely use it to fry steak. Thank you for your hard work, little Rongrong. Wang Ming grinned and then cut off the brainwaves. The moment Lotus Sun put down the phone, a beautiful figure broke through the door of the student union office. Student Jiang, the president is on a call, you can't go in. The assistant secretary of the student union tried to stop Jiang Yingying, but in the end wasn't able to. It's fine, just let her in. Close the door. Lotus Sun sat upright in the student union president's armchair with a smile on her face. Her natural and unrestrained attitude was in sharp contrast to Jiang Yingying's. After the door to the student union was completely closed, she crossed her fingers and rubbed her chin as she looked at Jiang Yingying. Student Jiang, it's best if you don't get too angry. You just changed back from a carp. If you're emotionally unstable and you change back again, it'll be bad. Jiang Yingying was clearly frightened by Lotus Sunday. She hadn't known that this had anything to do with emotions. After taking a few deep breaths, she clenched her teeth and looked at Lotus Sunday. Don't scare me, I'm not. Lotus Sun spread her hands with an expression that said it was up to her whether she believed it or not. One didn't come to the temple for nothing. In fact, Lotus Sun could more or less guess why Jiang Yingying had come to find her. When all was said and done, she felt that she had underestimated Jiang Yingying a little. She hadn't expected her to be so persistent about Wang Ling. Lotus Sun, I think this is a good opportunity for the school to introduce a testing system. Jiang Yingying said as she looked at Lotus Sun, her hands on the table. What opportunity? Don't play dumb, you clearly know. Jiang Yingying said, let's have a competition. Test results. If I score higher than you, you'll give me the seat next to Wang Ling. Lotus Sun's expression was as calm as an ancient well, and she felt that Jiang Yingying was a little cute. What if you lose? I have to get something, right? If I lose, I'll. Jiang Yingying thought for a while and felt that she didn't have anything that Lotus Sun could gamble with. Money, the girl definitely didn't care. Magic treasures, Lotus Sun didn't lack any. She could buy whatever she wanted with a wave of her arm. Thus, Jiang Yingying clenched her teeth. If I lose, I'll go back to my high school. And disappear from your sight. Chapter 16:16. In Lotus Sun's view, this bet was actually meaningless. Jiang Yingying had no chance of winning in any way. Although Jiang Yingying's style of doing things looked reckless, she had grown up under Marshal Zhang's influence, so she wouldn't fight without a chance of winning. Thus, when Lotus Sun saw Jiang Yingying charge into her office in a majestic manner and declare that she wanted to bet with her, her first reaction was that Jiang Yingying might have someone backing her up again. Lotus Sun first ruled out Jiang Xiaoqie. Recently, Jiang Xiaoqie had been very well behaved. Moreover, Lotus Sun knew that Grandpa had already warned him not to directly support Jiang Yingying when it came to going against Lotus Sunday. If Jiang Xiaoche was ruled out, the second most suspicious person was Ryoko Kuya. But Ryoko was already on the same side, so Lotus Sun ruled her out as well. Then, who was the most likely person to help Jiang Yingying? Lotus Sun felt that it was necessary to investigate Jiang Yingying's whereabouts before the test officially began. She would have asked Jiang Xiaoche or one of the core members of the battle sect to work with her internal intelligence network to handle this matter. But now, the Grey sect was flourishing. Those fanatical Grey Church members were basically the control guards of human flesh. There was simply too much information that Lotus Sun could provide. She just needed to use the Cult Master's order to send a message to the core members group. This would immediately attract the attention of the Grey Sect branch's management, and the entire Grey Sect would be linked together to gather everyone's power of information to get the information she wanted right away. Of course, Jiang Yingying was also a Grey Sect disciple, and one of the earliest ones at that. When Lotus Sun issued the Cult Master's order, she made sure to remind the branch members to avoid the Grey Sect group where Jiang Yingying was. Cult Master's order. Cult Master issued an order. We need Miss Jiang Yingying's recent whereabouts. Cult Master's order. Target, Miss Jiang Yingying's whereabouts for the past week. Anyone who provides a clue will be rewarded with 2,000 yuan. There's no limit to the number. In the student union office, Lotus Sun looked at the balance in her wallet on her phone, her heart as calm as an ancient well. Based on the 22,000 yuan in her wallet, even if it was deducted every 30 seconds, it would take until next year to finish deducting it. For Wang Ling. She didn't care about worldly possessions like money in the first place. After about an hour, Lotus Sun found what she wanted from the pile of videos in her hands. It was a surveillance report provided by a Grey Church follower who worked in a tea house. In the surveillance footage, Jiang Yingying was having a meal with a handsome young man with long hair and a dark purple Daoist robe. This young man's skin was as fair as snow, and he had the temperament of a celebrity. His manners were decent, and he was chatting cheerfully with Jiang Yingying in front of the tea house. Lotus Sun had never seen this person before, but she vaguely felt a sense of déjà vu from his temperament. Such a man should have been the center of attention if he were to be seen in the center of the city, but many of the people around him paid no attention. Did he use a spell similar to Great Shielding to reduce his sense of existence? Lotus Sun was very puzzled by this. If this person took the low-profile route, so why did they allow the surveillance cameras to record him? Was he not afraid that his identity would be investigated? This was the end of the investigation. The person had been captured, and there was a complete high-definition image. But Lotus Sun was still unable to find out who it was. She then used her family's smart AI system to compare it with Huaguo Water Curtain Group's huge database of customer data. In the end, she still found nothing. She was helpless. Lotus Sun sighed as she sat in her seat. She hadn't wanted to ask the seniors of Battle Sect to trouble everyone. But it didn't seem useful to just get a photo of this person. She had to figure out his identity. Seniors, I'm very sorry. I've already done my best to investigate. Although I've obtained a video of the person I want to investigate, I don't know him. I wonder if you can recognize him. Saying this, Lotus Sun sent a screenshot of the surveillance footage to the core members of Battle Sect. Immortal Toya, He looks a little like sect leader Grenade Throwing. Don't tell me he's Senior Immortal himself. Or does Senior Immortal actually have a younger brother? I don't have a younger brother, don't spread rumors. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal wiped at his sweat. Strange, I've never seen this person before. He's very unfamiliar. And in what way does he look like me? It stands to reason that all the brothers and sisters here know that I have a wide circle of friends and have a photographic memory. I only need to see everyone's face and name once to remember them clearly. If I've seen this person before, I definitely won't forget him. Lightning Dharmaraja said, speaking of which, judging from this person's appearance, he should be Tsilyanjanran's type, right? Tsilyanjanran, from his facial features, he does indeed have the potential to be a handsome guy. Unfortunately, I don't like fat boys. Fatty. This person isn't fat. Lotus Sun was puzzled. The person she saw in the surveillance footage was a very standard good-looking guy. Of course, she still liked Wang Ling more. Isn't he a fatty? He looks just like sect leader Mugu of Half Moon sect. Tsilyanjanran was also very surprised. She rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't seeing things. The person in the screenshot was indeed a fatty. It's definitely not a fatty. It's clearly a short-haired, big-breasted beauty. Nonsense, isn't he a fair-skinned pretty boy? I just don't know why he has a pair of beast ears. Isn't the animalization incident over? Could it be a spirit beast in human form? What are you talking about? Why did a half-beast appear? The person in the screenshot is clearly a long-legged little brother with a very bad hairstyle. Lotus Sun was horrified. It was just a screenshot, but the person everyone saw laughing and chatting with Jiang Yingying was actually different. If everyone sees a different person, then this person is definitely casting a spell. Then, Immortal Toya sighed and directly sent a voice message in the group to analyze the situation. Furthermore, this person's realm isn't low. He was actually able to fool so many of our core members, and everyone sees a different person. He made everyone see him differently. This kind of power probably far exceeds the battle prowess of a true immortal. It looks like things are getting interesting. Grenade-throwing senior immortal said, Miss Sun, you shouldn't investigate this matter for now, let us handle it. I'll let you know as soon as we have results. I'll definitely ferret out this mysterious transformer. Senior grenade-throwing, is this person very powerful? Lotus Sun asked. He's most likely a big shot, so we don't want Miss Sun to get hurt, said grenade-throwing senior immortal. Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded. Although I don't know what this person's purpose is, anyone who can shield themselves like this is definitely an almighty. Look at Brother Ling, isn't that the case? Hearing this, everyone nodded. This was the only thing that everyone agreed on, and no one had any reason to refute it. Because it really made sense. Chapter 16-17. The investigation of the Transformers had caused quite a stir among the core members of Battle Sect. There were a lot of spells like Thousand Faces Transfiguration in the cultivation world, and most of the time they were used by rogue cultivators exploring secret realms or the world as a team. Cultivators who didn't know each other, and it was common for them to assume identities for safety reasons. There had once been a person who used 1,000 faces to explore a secret realm in a team with different people. After this story spread, the term Man of 1,000 Faces became very popular in the cultivation world. But while the Man of 1,000 Faces had 1,000 faces, no matter what he looked like, everyone would see the same face at the same time. Unless there was an even more powerful spell than the Thousand Faces Transfiguration, it was impossible to produce a situation where everyone saw different things. This was a little out of line for the core members of Battle Sect. Fortunately, there were 2 new 10,000 level consultants among the core members recently. One was Star Traveler Li Xian, who summoned meteorites at the drop of a hat. The other was Zhang Zigue, known as the Father of Guevara. These two were the first 10,000 level experts who had been released from the Supreme Corp's winding diagram, and as soon as they came out, they had completed the task Wang Ling had assigned them with flying colors. Now, they had officially settled down in Songhai City and were starting to learn and adapt to the life of a modern cultivator. It was Jua who had arranged for them to live in. It was still Wei Ji's staff apartment. After Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen had moved out, the originally lively atmosphere had instantly become a lot quieter, and Wei Ji would occasionally feel lonely. He wasn't used to living under the same roof as strangers. But he was gradually getting used to it. The main reason was that he had too many pets to keep. He was short of money. And what the battle sect had given was simply too much. It was just a few more people living together in the living area. Not only would he be able to cover his feeding expenses, he would also be very rich. For Wei Ji, this was a very good deal. The only fly in the ointment was that Wei Ji noticed that these two uncles who had just moved in often did strange things, as if they were new to the city. "Senior, this thing is called a refrigerator. You don't have to do it at home when it snows. Look at how cold my Gugu chicken is. Its comb is all blue," Wei Ji said, sweating. "Okay, sorry, Mr. Landlord." Li Xian scratched his head and apologized from the bottom of his heart. It was destined that he and Zhang Zidong still had a long time to learn about the use of electrical appliances in the cultivation world. Wei Ji didn't take it to heart since he had a good attitude in admitting his mistake. It was only after Li Xian and Zhang Zipei moved in that he remembered to ask them about their background. This was because the war sect had given them too much money. As for money, Wei Ji was momentarily blinded by it, and he agreed without even thinking about it. "That, odd brother Zhua, where on earth are these two uncles from?" Wei Ji called at lunchtime. He had just saved the world again. Because there was a heavenly law durian at home, Li Xian and Zhang Zizi were very curious about it. When Wei Ji realized that the two of them were working together to break the durian open with a meteorite, he quickly went forward and explained what the durian was. That was all. The poor spirit of the earth had once again escaped a calamity. "Oh, it's brother Wei Ji. When you say two uncles, do you mean Senior Li Xian and Senior Zhang Zipi?" Zhua smiled. "Yes. I feel that they're very strange." A few days ago, he had heard the two of them discussing Dao in their room. They had actually been talking about something he didn't understand. Dao can be told, but it's not Dao. Brother Zizi is a little too persistent. Once persistent, let go of it, that's the right way. Existence precedes nature. Let me ask you, what is the nature of Dao? Then how do you define existence? Wei Ji was a little dazed by these few words. Even now, he felt a little dizzy just thinking about it. On the other end of the line, Zhua couldn't help laughing when he heard Wei Ji's mockery. "It's my fault. I forgot to tell you. Senior Li Xian and Senior Zhang Zipi have been in seclusion for a long time, so they're not very familiar with modern cultivation life. I arranged for them to stay with you so that you can take some time to guide them." Zhua said, "What, did they cause you trouble?" "It's not too much trouble. Don't worry, if the two seniors cause you any losses while they're here, the war sect will compensate you double. We've already paid a lot of rent." Wei Ji dropped his forehead into his hand and smiled bitterly. Actually, he wasn't a fussy person. He just wanted to understand Li Xian and Zhang Zipi better. After all, they were going to live together for a long time. If he could understand their tempers, he could avoid a lot of unnecessary conflicts. On the other end of the line, Zhua thought for a bit before saying, "It's been hard on you these 2 days, brother Wei Ji. I'll have Loopy Toad visit you in a few days. You probably haven't seen it for a while, right?" These words gave Wei Ji some peace of mind. "Ah! Dog too!" Wei Ji yelled loudly. It had indeed been a long time since he had seen Loopy Toad. When he had gone to look for it previously, he had heard that it had been in seclusion. Of course, it hadn't been because it was in seclusion that Loopy Toad hadn't come to see Wei Ji in the last few days. It had been promoted to a divine beast long ago. It was just that Mother Wang had recently given birth to Wang Wan and needed to be taken care of. As a mature dog, Loopy Toad had also started to learn how to wash clothes, cook and help little girl Wan change diapers. Then it's a deal, odd brother Zhua. Hearing that Loopy Toad was coming, Wei Ji was instantly happy. He was happier than if he had received his rent payment. After ending the call, he was about to go out to the Spirit Beast Market to buy some beef bone sticks and meat flies to make special dog food for Loopy Toad. This was the food Wei Ji had specially invented for Loopy Toad. He used the bone crusher hand to shatter the bone marrow inside the bone, then inserted a vacuum straw into one side of the beef bone to suck out the bone marrow and mix it with the meat flies. He then crushed it in a juicer, and after mixing it in a ratio of 1:1, he sprinkled a nutritional powder packet over it. Finally, he poured the whole beef bone stick back into it to bake it, and it was done. It was only when Loopy Toad visited that it could enjoy this kind of royal treatment. As one of Loopy Toad's few friends in the human world, Wei Ji was indeed a good friend. While he was changing his shoes at the door, Wei Ji suddenly saw Zhang Zizi come over. "Mr. Landlord, if it's possible, can you take this old man with you?" "Where's Senior Li Xian?" "He was going to go out with me, but just got a call from sect leader Grenade Throwing, so he's busy." "That's fine. Senior, come with me. If you run into anything you don't understand, don't be in a hurry to help," said Wei Ji. "I understand," Zhang Zizi replied confidently with a smile. The two of them took a bus from the staff apartment to the Spirit Beast Market. Everything was very harmonious on the bus. Wei Ji breathed a slight sigh of relief. But when he got off the bus, he suddenly realized that something wasn't right. This was because he found that Zhang Zistiel was holding a sack full of coins in his hand. "Senior, sorry, I couldn't help myself." Zhang Zizi rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. "Say, how are we going to return this sack?" Chapter 16-18. Wei Ji dropped his forehead deeply into his hand, even though Ajua had already told him that this senior Zhang Zistiel had a dark history of stealing things. But in modern cultivation society, if you didn't correct this habit, you would still be arrested and sent to prison. Furthermore, petty theft was considered the lowest level even in Songhai First Prison. Even if Zhang Ziqin really went in, as an ancient powerhouse, he wouldn't have any face. After all, it was impossible for him to be locked up with the Mahjong trio who had committed a huge crime. At the entrance of the cafe, Wei Ji ordered 2 cups of iced latte, then patiently educated Zhang Zizai about the law in front of the cafe, criticizing and educating him. "Senior, don't blame me for being long-winded. If you don't change your bad habit, there will be big problems in the future," Wei Ji said. Zhang Zizi stirred the straw in his hand and sucked on the iced latte in his hand. It was his first time drinking coffee, and it felt great. Most importantly, he suddenly felt that Wei Ji was very cute. It was rare to see such an interesting and patient junior like him. Zhang Zipei's nature was not bad. Other than the fact that it was hard for him to change his habit of stealing things, he was not ambiguous when it came to admitting his mistakes. Now he and Li Xian were living under someone else's roof, and the landlord was Wei Ji. Although Wei Ji's age was very different from theirs. But when 3 people walked together, there must be a teacher. If they wanted to familiarize themselves with modern society, they still had to rely on Wei Ji. Therefore, in a sense, Wei Ji was also the master of Zhang Zidong, Li Xian, and the others. After listening to Wei Ji's criticism, Zhang Zizai also finished the last cup of latte in his hand. Then he looked at Wei Ji with shifty eyes. "Return the money and redeem yourself, okay? Atone for my crimes." Wei Ji didn't understand. "Where are the pickpockets?" Zhang Xian asked. It was a crowded place where pickpockets could easily be found. Wei Ji's first thought was the subway station. Actually, it was on the way. It just so happened that the Spirit Beast Market that they were going to was a transfer from the bus to the subway. If it weren't for the fact that they had to educate Zhang Zistiel, they would have already taken the subway. "Senior, are you here to catch a thief?" Wei Ji suddenly laughed. He thought that Zhang Zizi's idea was good, but he didn't think it would be that easy. Thieves nowadays are very smart. And it's not easy to grab the first one. It's alright, I'll see what I can do. If I can catch 10 of them today, you can buy me another cup of this. What's this called? Iced latte. Iced latte. With this, it's enough. Senior, if you can really catch 10 of them, I'll buy you 2 cups. Wei Ji suddenly found it interesting. Deal. Zhang Zizi nodded. Then, the two of them got up and walked in the direction of the Line 8 subway station. At the same time, the thieves lurking in the subway still had no idea what was going to happen next. As the father of Che Guevara, during the ancient times, Zhang Zipei had long been labeled as the godly thief of the ages. However, this label was so old that it was unbearable to recall the past. Even Zhang Zipei could not recall it. There is a line in the lyrics, "I have not been a big brother for many years." As for Zhang Zidi, he had been trapped in the shrouded corpse painting for so long and had experienced so many years. It seemed that he had lost the nickname of godly thief. At this moment, he had changed into modern clothes and stood in the crowd in the slim casual sweater that Wei Ji had prepared for him. No one could have imagined it. This ordinary-looking uncle turned out to be the leader of the bandits. Can we really catch them? Wei Ji stood beside Zhang Zipei, feeling very curious. This was because catching thieves had to be done smoothly without delaying their journey. 10 pickpockets was not a lot, but it was not a small number either. There were many pickpockets in the subway station, but most of them were very cautious. If some people did not make a move, there was nothing you could do about them. In fact, the moment they entered the subway station, Zhang Zipei's thief head radar had already been activated. Just by looking around, he had already locked onto a number of suspects. Huaheng Academy, however, these thieves were scattered. Before he caught them in the act, Zhang Zipei could not directly attack them as a group. However, he had another way. Do you see the man with the silver watch in front? Zhang Zipei looked straight ahead and whispered in Wei Ji's ear. Ah, you found him so quickly. Wei Ji could not believe it. Don't stare at him, or else it will make him suspicious. After Zhang Zipei finished speaking, Wei Ji immediately looked elsewhere. Although he had only glanced at them, Wei Ji really found it hard to believe that the man wearing the silver watch and looking like a white-collar elite was actually a pickpocket. Pickpockets were good at disguising themselves. In ancient times, there were many people who wore bright and beautiful Taoist robes, dressed up as celebrities in the cultivation world, made friends everywhere, and then waited for the opportunity to steal from other people's homes. This old tradition was passed down by Zhang Zipei. He did not expect it to be continued in the modern cultivation society. As soon as he entered, he saw these modern peers. Oh no, pickpockets. Zhang Zipei actually felt like he had returned home. As a thief head, the behavior of these people was too child's play in Zhang Zipei's eyes. The number is enough. After using his thief head radar to analyze the scattered pickpockets in the subway station, Zhang Zipei had a good idea. He felt that he could exceed the target. About a few seconds later, he began to say very loudly to Wei Ji, who would bring such a big bag of gold coins to the bank. As he spoke, he shook the box of coins that he had just taken from the bus. In fact, it was not gold coins, but Zhang Zipei said it casually. Hug. Apologize. Wei Ji looked at this sudden scene and was clearly stunned. Then, he quickly touched the back of his head. He almost couldn't react. But he quickly understood Zhang Zipei's intention. This was a group mockery. He deliberately said this sentence so that the nearby pickpockets who heard it would gather together. As expected. When Zhang Zidua and Wei Ji boarded the subway, the pickpockets that were targeted by Zhang Zidua earlier also followed them. Some were solo thieves, while others were gang thieves. As soon as they entered the subway, Wei Ji and Zhang Zipei were surrounded by the pickpockets. This was to deceive people, so that the thieves who reached over could not be noticed. Zhang Zipei deliberately held his bag of coins in his hands. 1 minute after the subway began to move normally, he felt several pairs of hands begin to move, 8 hands. Zhang Zipei couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He felt that this was too child's play. As a thief head. In the past, he actually had another title. It was called Thousand-Hand Guanyin. Everyone, don't you think it's a bit too much to make a move on an old man with so many of you? At this moment, in the silent subway, Zhang Zipei suddenly spoke. Wei Ji felt that doing this would alert the enemy. But at this time, he saw Zhang Zipei put the bag of coins on the ground. This bag of coins seemed to have an attractive force. The moment it landed, several thieves nearby fell at the same time. Those thieves all let out a strange sound. Then, they all fell to the ground along with the bag of coins. They found that their hands were stuck to the bag of coins. They couldn't pull it out. Chapter 16-19. Catching a thief was sometimes that simple, plain, and unpretentious. In front of the thief, all resistance was useless. These thieves would never think that their bags of money had already been cursed by Zhang Zizi. As long as their hands touched it, they would be sucked in and unable to take it off. Then, Zhang Zizi took out his phone and took a few pictures of the world-famous painting of the money bag in front of him. Zhang Zizi didn't really understand the other functions of the phone, but he had already learned the photo function. This was direct evidence. After taking pictures, he even recorded a video. It was a one-stop service. You can do anything at such a young age, but you have to do this kind of thieving thing. As a senior in the industry, Zhang Zizi stared at the young people in front of him who had reached out their hands and let out a long sigh. Nowadays, the people in the industry were getting more and more depressed. Especially the thief with the silver watch, which attracted Zhang Zizi's special attention. At a glance, he knew that the watch was put together to package themselves. In order to package their rich identities, the male and female socialites on the internet would do anything. They put together hotels, luxury stockings, sports cars, watches, and even afternoon tea. After taking pictures and posting them on their WeChat moments, they would leave. But a thief was a thief. No matter how they packaged themselves, they couldn't change their nature of thieving. Don't you feel the slightest bit of shame? Zhang Zizi questioned the pickpockets. Every penny and every item that you steal could be the victim's entire family's wealth and life. I really feel ashamed and shameless for you. Wei Ji suddenly realized that Zhang Zizi's skin was extraordinarily thick. It was obvious that he was doing this kind of shady business. Why could he still use such a sincere tone? Wei Ji was puzzled. Regarding this, Wei Ji actually didn't understand it clearly. He didn't know that standing in front of him was the biggest thief in the industry. Senior. We're just trying to make a living. Is there a need to be so extreme? The man with the silver watch said with a sad face. They were caught in the act by Zhang Zizi, and their photos and videos were taken. They suddenly knew that they had met an expert today. Therefore, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly in front of Zhang Zizi. Counting the number of people in front of him, Zhang Zizi caught a total of 6 people in this wave. But this number was still not enough. Not even a cup of iced latte. However, Zhang Zipei knew very well that the pickpockets in the circle of thieves rarely came out to work alone. Only by covering for each other could the success rate be increased. Therefore, Zhang Zipei determined that these 7 people had other accomplices around them. However, after seeing the 7 people fall into the trap, he immediately abandoned his companions and played the role of a passerby. Zhang Ziyan touched his chin. Recently, he had been learning modern words from Li Xian. He didn't expect that the skill of pretending to be a passerby to have something in common with the world of pickpocketing. His goal was to gather 10 people to complete his mission. Therefore, there was no need to capture all of them. As long as one of these 7 people could stand out and point out their accomplices, everything would be fine. But Zhang Zipei was also very clear. All of this had to be resolved before the train reached the next station. Otherwise, once the door was opened, his accomplices would slip away without hesitation. At this moment, Zhang Zizi secretly stared at these people and said meaningfully, "Young people, it's inevitable to make mistakes. But as long as it's corrected in time, it's not too late. I'll give you a chance to point out your accomplices before the door of the next station opens. Whoever points out first, I'll let him go." The 7 pickpockets all lowered their heads. It was true that they had accomplices. But in the end, they were still working for the pickpocket organization behind them. There was a rule in the organization that if you were caught, you should obediently go to jail. Generally, if you attempted a crime, you could be released after a dozen days. As for betraying your accomplices, this was absolutely not something they could do. Because the pickpocket organization would retaliate. But Zhang Zipei seemed to be able to read their minds. He clearly understood the thoughts of the 7 people in front of him. If you're worried about retaliation, you don't have to worry. I can guarantee that as long as you turn over a new leaf, no one can do anything to you. I think you've all seen my means. Hurry up and make your decision. The next station is coming soon. At this time, the man wearing a silver watch suddenly pointed at several people in front of him and shouted, "Those are my accomplices." A man with a killer hairstyle, an auntie with a sagging chest, and an internet celebrity with a red mobile phone. And that middle-aged Mediterranean man. The description of these characteristics was very accurate. So Zhang Zipei quickly locked on to these people. 1 for 4. Just enough to complete the target. Damn it. The pickpockets who were pointed out by the man with a silver watch were all shocked. They didn't expect the man to betray them. They all fled to other carriages. But how could they so easily slip away under Zhang Zipei's eyes? Zhang Zipei waved his hand, and these people suddenly felt their pants and skirts loosening. They inexplicably fell off their bodies, and then they all tripped and fell to the ground. This was another unique skill that Zhang Zipei had learned, divine clothes stripping hand. It could quickly take off any clothes of the target. Because they were in a public place, Zhang Zipei didn't do it too harshly. Otherwise, these people wouldn't even have a piece of clothing left on them. So at the entrance of the next subway station, the nearby plainclothes policeman received a call and immediately rushed to the scene. When they saw Zhang Zipei and Wei Ji escorting a total of 10 pickpockets out of the subway, all the policemen were shocked. They hadn't seen such a large group of thieves for a long time. Because the man with a silver watch reported him, Zhang Zipei kept his promise and let the man go. The man with a silver watch wasn't in the line. And before the man with a silver watch left, he wrote a talisman on the man's palm. This was for the man with a silver watch to save his life. This was to prevent any future retaliation from happening. Police comrade, because a junior reported him, I kept my promise and let him go. Is that okay? Zhang Zipei took the initiative to step forward and shake hands with the plainclothes policeman. He stole something from you. If you decide not to pursue it, it's naturally not a problem. The plainclothes policeman wiped his sweat. Zhang Zipei showed the picture taken on his mobile phone. This is the man. The one with a silver watch. Ah, I've never seen his face before. He should be a new guy in the pickpocket circle. He might have been forced to join because he was threatened. A few old policemen came forward to recognize his face and shook their heads. One of the old policemen sighed. He stared at the old faces in front of him and whispered to Zhang Zizi, the 2 groups of people you saw are from the 2 biggest pickpocketing organizations in the circle. They have a large number of people. One is called the Hunters Association and the other is called the Godly Thief Association. Zhang Zizai smiled. Is it okay to tell me all this? The old policeman put his hand on Zhang Zipei's shoulder. Although I don't know who you are, I can tell that you are an expert. Even experienced plainclothes officers like us can't catch up to you. I wonder if you are interested in being our consultant. This isn't a good idea. Zhang Zipei smiled. There will be a salary. The old policeman said, 10,000 a month. As long as you can complete the target and help me destroy the Hunters Association and the Godly Thief Association, everything else is fine. 10,000 yuan. Zhang Zipei touched his chin. 10,000 yuan could buy more than 300 large iced lattes. It sounded like a good deal. Okay. In the end, Zhang Zipei and the old policeman named Kong Feng added each other on WeChat and nodded. Before leaving, Zhang Zizai gave the bag of money to Kong Feng. So this isn't your money? Kong Feng was surprised. No. Actually, they were all stolen from these pickpockets. It is said that these pickpockets stole it from the cash box of a bus. The pickpockets. Zhang Zipei didn't expect that he would join the anti-pickpocketing plainclothes police force as a consultant. On the way to the Spirit Beast Market, he suddenly turned to look at Wei Ji. Did you arrange this? Wei Ji was sweating profusely. He wasn't good at lying, so he could only tell the truth. I'm sorry, Senior. I just thought it was very interesting, so I sent it to Odd Brother Zhua, and he said he could introduce you to a job. Senior, please don't be angry, I'm not angry. Later, I'll let Senior drink his fill of iced latte. Deal. Zhang Zipei nodded with a smile. He increasingly felt that Wei Ji's back was rather adorable. Also, joining an anti-pickpocketing organization seemed like a good idea. It could be considered as giving him, the eternal old man, some residual energy. Chapter 1620. In the lively spirit beast market, all kinds of regular spirit beasts for sale were obediently squatting in their own glass cabinets, eating the exquisite feed prepared by the merchants and waiting for their owners. This was Shanghai City's largest spirit beast market, where you could buy almost any spirit beast you wanted. Spirit beasts below level 5 didn't need a license, and only needed to provide proof of their realm. Spirit beasts below the Golden Core stage could be directly taken home after paying. Spirit beasts of the 5th grade and above were mostly large spirit beasts, in other words, between the 4th grade and the 1st grade. In addition to having a certain realm, cultivators also needed to provide a professional pet trainer's qualification certificate. A high realm didn't mean that one had the ability to control and treat spirit beasts well. In modern society, spirit beasts and cultivators actually had an equal relationship. The seller of the spirit beast actually played the role of an intermediary. Apart from the cost of the spirit beast's feed, there was also the intermediary fee and the monthly rent for the store's maintenance. Of course, the largest proportion of this money was still the spirit beast's employment fee. It was set to buy a spirit beast. In fact, it was to hire a spirit beast to fight for you, and the money was transferred to the hired spirit beast's exclusive account. High-level spirit beasts had spiritual intelligence and knew how to trade and enjoy life. So it wasn't strange for modern cultivators to see some transformed spirit beasts appear in the downtown area. Of course, there were also permanent employment buyouts. A contract had to be signed between the employer and the spirit beast. The contract would last until the employer had no descendants and was unable to inherit the spirit beast, or until the spirit beast died. Such an equal and strict cultivation system would have been unimaginable in ancient times. Standing in this huge spirit beast market, Zhang Zipei felt as if it had been a lifetime since he was here, hearing the clamor of people and the cries of spirit beasts. A few days ago, he and Li Xian had watched a classic movie called The Shawshank Redemption. In it was an old man who had been locked up in prison for decades. After he was released, he couldn't adapt to the modern world. In the end, the old man chose to hang himself in the hotel where he was staying. Seeing this scene, Zhang Zipei and Li Xian also found 2 ropes. When Wei Ji opened the door, he saw the 2 of them hanging from the rafters and chatting. They were the immortal experts of eternity. In some sense, they were quite lonely. That scene had left a deep impression on Wei Ji. He felt that these 2 strange uncles were performing some kind of performance art. But Wang Ling now needed Li Xian and Zhang Zipei to adapt to modern life. Therefore, the 2 of them were also working hard to learn and adapt. Little Ji. The 2 of them were walking happily. Suddenly, Zhang Zi called out to Wei Ji. "What's wrong, senior?" Wei Ji revealed a puzzled expression. "Go ahead. I want to sit by this fountain for a while. I haven't seen so many people in a long time." Zhang Zi secretly sighed. "All right." Wei Ji nodded and readily agreed. Before he left, he exhorted, "Senior, don't take other people's things. Don't worry, this old man is now the anti-pickpocketing group's consultant." "You have to set an example," Zhang Zizi replied. Wei Ji was relieved. He saw Zhang Zistiel sitting by the spring alone. He stared at it for a few seconds before leaving. Although he felt that he still did not know what kind of person Zhang Ziqin was. But from the back view, he felt that Zhang Zidi and Li Xian, the 2 new uncles, must have their own stories. Standing by the fountain, Zhang Ziqin sensed the people in the downtown area and was lost in thought. Modern cultivation society seemed a lot smaller than it had been in ancient times, but the people in front of him were condensed from ancient times, and Zhang Ziqin's thoughts couldn't help but wander back to a long, long time ago. As he settled down, he constantly reflected on what he had done in the past. Even if it was all smoke in the past and he could never return to it. After sitting quietly for a while, Zhang Ziqin received a call from Li Xian. "Brother Ziqin, where are you now? Why did you leave me for the meeting and sneak out on your own?" Zhang Ziqin snickered. "I'm going out for a stroll with little friend Wei Ji. The world is so big, I also want to explore it. It's like this, I received a request for help from Battle Sect. They need to investigate a man of 1,000 faces." Li Xian told Zhang Ziqin everything that grenade-throwing senior immortal had told him. "Everyone sees a different face, right?" Zhang Ziqin frowned. "Yes. Because we don't know the identity of this man of 1,000 faces, student Sun is very troubled. You know, that girl has a good relationship with Ling Jinren. If we can help, maybe we can get Miss Sun to put in a good word for us." "I understand." Zhang Ziqin nodded. When it came to the ways of the world, he and Li Xian were both wily old foxes, and didn't need to say much. "So what can you think of? A spell that can make everyone see a different face. Is this a kind of illusion?" Li Xian thought that he had a lot of experience, but he had never heard of such a magic art. The main thing was that everyone saw a different face, and even Li Xian himself couldn't tell. He stared at the screenshot for a long time, and realized that the person in the picture was a little lowly in white stockings, which was different from what everyone else saw. "What the hell, there's actually a rumor in Battle Sect that I'm a Lolican, and I'm not a paladin." Li Xian dropped his forehead into his hand, feeling a headache coming on. Zhang Ziqin pinched his chin and thought for a while before saying, "This old man has thought of a spell, but it's from ancient times, an ancient spell? How is that possible?" Li Xian was astonished. Although the probability is very low, this old man doesn't think it's completely impossible. Dao ancestor Wang may have locked up so many people in the picture, but this old man still believes that there must be people he missed out. "Brother Ziqin, Do you mean that apart from us, there are still people among those ancient experts who are still alive today? And who are still living in seclusion in the human world? It's just a guess. There's no conclusive evidence. Zhang Ziqin said, but this is a little troublesome. To be able to cast that kind of illusion spell, one has to be at least an Earth ancestor. But why would an Earth ancestor look for a little girl to make a deal? This old man can't figure it out no matter how much I think about it. Things were getting interesting. Actually, Zhang Ziqin felt that rather than doing this kind of mindless investigation, it would be faster to directly ask Jiang Yingying. Directly ask Miss Jiang. That's not very good. It's just a secret investigation. Since Miss Jiang has already met him once, I'm sure she will meet him again. Zhang Ziqin said, tonight, Brother Li Xian, let's go to Miss Jiang's house to take a look. The cultivation community in modern society has wall-penetrating alarms. If we use the wall-penetrating technique, we'll be discovered. Li Xian was worried. Who said we're going to go through the wall? Zhang Ziqin laughed. Just pick the lock and it'll be over. This was his old profession. Li Xian was shocked. Aren't you an anti-pickpocketing consultant now? Zhang Ziqin said, this is called familiarization. If I don't practice for a long time, my hands will be rusty. If I'm rusty as a consultant, how can I be a consultant for others? Li Xian. Chapter 1621. In the middle of the night, Li Xian and Zhang Zizi sneaked to Jiang Yingying's apartment. Originally, Jiang Yingying lived in the staff condominium. Old Master Jiang wanted to take care of his granddaughter's daily life and make it a habit. Nowadays, young people only know how to order takeout every day, which is especially unhealthy. But after Jiang Yingying transferred to number 60 high school, she begged him to move out and choose an apartment closer to number 60 high school. Of course, this was mainly due to Jiang Yingying's own selfishness. She had wanted to block Wang Ling on his way to school. Jiang Yingying had read countless shonen manga with the theme of youth on campus, and almost all of them had similar scenes. For example, a man and a woman would meet on the way to school, and because they were late, they would bump into each other, and because of this indescribable fate, they would develop feelings for each other. Every time Jiang Yingying thought of this, she couldn't help blushing. She held her face in her hands, patted her slender legs, and lay on the bed, daydreaming. She felt that if there was such a plot, it must be very romantic. However, in fact, if they really ran into Wang Ling, it would definitely not be that romantic. It was obvious that this was the scene of a car accident. For Jiang Yingying, the backlash from colliding with Wang Ling was no different from being repeatedly run over by a heavy truck weighing dozens of tons. And then, there was no then. There were all kinds of liquids on the ground except for Jiang Yingying. However, it was also cute for a young girl to keep fantasizing. Jiang Yingying didn't disappoint either. Ever since she had moved to the apartment near number 60 high school, she hadn't run into Wang Ling even once. But she didn't believe it, and still got up early every day to wait for him at the gate. And Wang Ling had already seen through Jiang Yingying's plan. He felt that Jiang Yingying was very troublesome, even more so than when he had first met Lotus Sun in the first semester of high school. As the saying goes, there is no harm without comparison. Now that he had Jiang Yingying as a template, Wang Ling instantly felt that Lotus Sun was easy to use. In comparison, Lotus Sun was much more mature and sensible than Jiang Yingying. Most importantly, Lotus Sun would now take the initiative to share some of his worries, and all he had to offer was a few insignificant enchanted white rabbit creamy candies, as well as being secretly liked by her. For Wang Ling, this seemed like a free deal. In any case, he couldn't really fall in love with her, so what did it matter? Not to mention now, it would be impossible in the future. But now, he didn't have the slightest bit of interest in her. That's right, not the slightest bit. He had raised the same flag in his heart countless times. including the last time he went to the Palm Cliff to save Lotus Sunday. In the end, Wang Ling summed it up in 6 words in his private diary in the space: strong classmate affection. When Li Xian and Zhang Zijin agreed to meet under Jiang Yingying's apartment, it was 6:00 p.m. on Thursday, December 24th. The two of them checked the time with their phones. "Why don't you just sneak in through the back door? Brother thief, we have to abide by the laws of the modern world. Last time you smashed the door with a meteorite and said it was an unstoppable force. Because of this, I was deducted a little. Therefore, he had to be careful now. Don't cause unnecessary trouble." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Zhang Zizi shrugged helplessly. Just as he was about to enter the apartment, the security guard at the door suddenly stopped him. "Excuse me, what do you do?" The old security guard had never seen their faces before, and felt that Li Xian and Zhang Zizi's gazes were sneaky. Li Xian admitted that he didn't have much experience in this area. He had traveled a lot, but he had very few opportunities to sneak into a girl's boudoir. The last time he had accidentally appeared in Old God's house, which couldn't be considered a sneak, but was just an invitation from Old God. However, Old God, who had a guilty conscience, had hidden him, and in the end, it had led to a huge misunderstanding and a huge blunder. Thus, Li Xian was actually a little resistant to going into a girl's boudoir. Not only was he resistant, he was also a little traumatized. Zhang Zizi, on the other hand, was much more experienced in this area. In order to understand modern thief methods, he had finished the Detective Conan series not long ago, and had mainly watched the parts about Monster Thief Kid. Naturally, he knew the importance of disguise. Thus, Zhang Zizi very naturally took out his ID from his pocket. This was the temporary consultant's ID that anti-pickpocketing unit leader Kong Feng had given him, and it even had the police station's official seal on it. Zhang Zizi snickered. "Sir, we are the consultants of the anti-pickpocketing unit. We mainly came to visit your community to see if there are any loopholes. We'll be out soon." The old man looked at Zhang Zizi's shifty-eyed look and felt that he was not a good person. He took a photo of the ID and seemed to send it to a friend who knew more about this area. After confirming that there was no mistake, he opened the gate. "Then you can go in. You two have worked hard." The first level was finally passed smoothly. Li Xian secretly breathed a sigh of relief. After all, it was Zhang Zizi. His experience as a godly thief and his big heart and reaction ability, which had been cultivated by long-term work in this area, helped him in the end. The next part was the most exciting part of the competition. Pick the lock. In the modern cultivation world, the lock of a cultivator's house was also very special. When inserting the key, one had to recite a spell in his heart to open the restriction in the lock. Otherwise, the alarm would immediately sound. Before coming here, Zhang Zizi had specially studied it. It sounded very advanced, but in Zhang Zizi's eyes, it was actually child's play. It was just a method left over from ancient times, and it was a simplified version. When he was robbing tombs, he didn't know how many tomb locks he had picked, and the restriction in those tombs was much stronger than this one. If he missed one step, he would die without a burial place. When they arrived at the door of Jiang Yingying's house, Li Xian looked a little nervous. "Should I go and keep watch, Brother Zizi?" "No need. It's just a lock. It'll be done soon." Zhang Zizi snickered. "By the way, the skill of picking locks was taught to me by a teacher. Isn't picking locks the best skill of a godly thief like you?" "I think I'm very good at it, but that person is better than me." Zhang Zizi snickered. "In the beginning, I could pick locks with only a knitting wool. But that person picked the lock with his mind. That's a strange person." Li Xian nodded and asked, "Who is this person? Do I know him?" There were only a few famous people in ancient times, and he had a lot of experience. He always felt that if Zhang Zizi knew someone, he might also know him. Sometimes, the communication between people of the same level was so simple and unpretentious. It was like WeChat moments. Sometimes, you would find that your friend liked another friend's post, and then you would know that the two people actually knew each other. I don't know if you've heard of him. Zhang Zizi said, his surname is Xiang, and his name is Xiang Yi. Chapter 1622. The most famous godly thief of the immemorial era was none other than Zhang Zizi. However, other than Zhang Zizi, there were also other immemorial era experts that could be ranked. Zhang Zipei was the first godly thief in those days. The second person behind Zhang Zipei was John Doe, who was known as the Ghost Walker. As the name suggested, because no one knew this person's name, he was called John Doe. Of course, there was also a saying that this person was actually called Wu Ming, but later, his name disappeared inexplicably. Li Xian once had a face-to-face encounter with Wu Ming. This person was petite and his face could not be seen clearly. His breath was wrapped in layers of secret bandages, airtight. He was a person who hid himself very well. Therefore, at that time, some people also guessed that John Doe's real identity was a little girl. And at that time, it also caused a stir. Do you know John Doe? At this time, Li Xian couldn't help but ask curiously. Is there such a person? Zhang Zipei raised his eyebrows and then shook his head. She is the second godly thief in your world. You don't know him. Li Xian was surprised. Oh, the ranking is given by others. The competition for the first and second place is just empty talk. Zhang Zipei snickered and said, I focused on business performance in those days. Who would look at the ranking? Zhang Zipei's words were actually quite reasonable, which made Li Xian speechless for a while. While they were talking in a low voice, Zhang Zipei suddenly twisted the door handle and opened the door. Done. So fast. For me, this score is not enough. Zhang Zipei sighed and said, I have to practice more later. The main reason was that the lock core of the modern cultivation world was too simple, almost brainless. Zhang Zipei was used to picking high-end locks, so when he encountered these modern locks, he often thought the problem was complicated, which delayed the time of picking the lock. This was like a high-level player predicting the position of a low-level player. You would think that the low-level player had good body movements, so he could attack and predict crazily. But the opponent walked in a straight line. And you. All your skills, so Zhang Zipei took 3 minutes to pick the lock of Jiang Yingying's house. This was a humiliation to him. But in the eyes of a layman like Li Xian, who only knew how to use meteorites to smash the door, it was already very powerful. It would be great if I could see my master again in my lifetime. After opening the door, Zhang Ziden could not help but mutter softly. That god called Xiang Yi. He knows a lot more than just picking locks. But if it's a lock of this level, he can open it in the blink of an eye. Zhang Zizi's eyes were full of admiration, showing his respect for Xiang Yi. This aroused Li Xian's curiosity. Because he rarely saw Zhang Zipi reveal such an expression. With his experience, there was no way he wouldn't know those famous ancient powerhouses, so he thought that Zhang Zipei was making up some story to trick him. But now, it seemed that these things were all true. In the past, Li Xian would not have dared to imagine raiding a high school girl's apartment at night. No matter what, he was still a modest gentleman. He would never do something that would offend a young lady. It was ungentlemanly behavior. He didn't expect that the persona he had maintained for so many years would be completely shattered on this day. For a moment, Li Xian's heart became somewhat complicated. The apartment where Jiang Yingying lived was relatively small, only about 50 square meters. But although it was small, it had all the essentials. It was a single room. Every corner of the room was light pink, full of the heart of a young girl. At first glance, it was obvious that it was a girl's apartment. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Ziden grabbed a surveillance camera in front of him at lightning speed and covered it with a seal. This was a surveillance camera specially installed by Marshal Jiang to protect his granddaughter's safety. It was directly facing the door. Fortunately, Zhang Ziden reacted quickly and directly covered the camera with a seal. The picture taken by the surveillance camera was temporarily affected by the magic effect and froze at the scene where the door was not opened more than 10 seconds ago. No wonder he is Brother Zizi. Li Xian exclaimed in his heart. He followed Zhang Ziden carefully, trying not to make any sound. Because the room was quiet, and Jiang Yingying seemed to have fallen asleep. What time did she sleep? It was only 6:15 in the evening. Weren't the young people in the cultivation world the new human beings who advocated sleeping with someone and getting high? Li Xian instinctively sensed that something was wrong. Brother Zizi, the situation seems to be a bit, don't talk so much. The two secretly established a team channel to communicate with each other through the voice-transmitting spell. Zhang Ziden frowned and stuffed a slippery thing into Li Xian's hand. This is... Li Xian looked at the thing in his hand and was greatly shocked. Silk stockings. Zhang Ziden said. Silk stockings. What do I want silk stockings for? Of course you want to wear it on your head. It can cover up a little, Zhang Ziden said calmly. But you stealing her silk stockings is a bit, I have no choice. Just put up with it, brother. After saying that, Zhang Ziden couldn't help but laugh. Besides, how can you say that you steal from a cultured person? This is clearly stealing. Li Xian was speechless. He was an honest man. It was also the first time that he had done such a shady business. He was extremely nervous in his heart. He had always used meteorites to solve problems. After feeling that the situation in the room was not good, he immediately became nervous and didn't know what to do next. After all, this kind of sneaky situation was not Li Xian's home field. His mind was blank. Staring at the silk stocking in his hand, he finally gritted his teeth and put it on according to Zhang Ziden's instructions. On the other side. Without saying anything, Zhang Ziden took out his cell phone and took a photo of Li Xian. Li Xian, Brother Zizi, what are you doing? Zhang Ziden, just a souvenir. Li Xian, what souvenir? Why don't you use it yourself? Zhang Ziden laughed again. I'm experienced and don't need these things. You are a newcomer, so of course you have to use it. Besides, you are very lucky today. Li Xian didn't take it. What do you mean? Zhang Ziden, this silk stocking was used by Miss Jiang. Li Xian knew that he had been tricked by Zhang Ziden. He was so angry that he immediately took off the black silk stockings and threw them on the ground. This is King ridiculous. At this moment, Zhang Ziden and Li Xian suddenly heard some noise at Jiang Yingying's door. Someone is coming. Let's hide first. Zhang Ziden reacted quickly and immediately dashed toward a room with Li Xian. Li Xian was purely dragged away by Zhang Ziden. When he entered the room, he was shocked. Because the place where Zhang Ziden took him to hide was Jiang Yingying's bedroom. At this moment, Jiang Yingying looked very tired and was sleeping with her head buried in the quilt. Li Xian immediately felt uncomfortable. Why are we hiding here? The place is so small. Where can we hide? Zhang Ziden made a shushing gesture and then winked at Li Xian. The two of them quieted down at the same time and vigilantly looked outside the door with the X-ray vision technique. At this moment, the doorknob of Jiang Yingying's apartment was twisted open by another hand. Chapter 1623. Kwamiya Ryoko didn't know what it was like to squeeze 4 people under a bed. But now she knew. Because Jiang Yingying's bed was not wide enough, it could only fit 2 adults at most. So the situation under the bed was like this. Li Xian and Kusikusa Shiger were lying at the bottom, which was the first layer. Zhang Ziden and Kwamiya Ryoko were lying on their backs. The scene was so beautiful that no one dared to look at it directly. The 4 of them had decided one after another not to tell anyone about it. Senior Li Xian. What are you doing here? Kwamiya Ryoko didn't know who Zhang Ziden was, but she knew Li Xian. She had heard that Li Xian was sent by Lotus Sun and also a great hero who had helped the Kwamiya family through difficulties. Therefore, she respected Li Xian very much. She didn't expect that Li Xian's behavior today would surprise her. Li Xian's face was red. Although he had thousands of reasons to explain that things were not what Kwamiya Ryoko thought, he now knew that his image in Kwamiya Ryoko's eyes had been ruined. No need to explain, Senior Li Xian. I understand, Kwamiya Ryoko said. Li Xian. In fact, Kwamiya Ryoko's current situation was not very good. Because Kusikusa Shiger was under her, she always felt that her upper body seemed to be particularly crowded. Shiger, don't raise your upper body, Kwamiya Ryoko secretly transmitted her voice. Kusikusa Shiger replied innocently, Miss, I really didn't raise my upper body on purpose. In an instant, Kwamiya Ryoko suddenly understood. She seemed to know something and gritted her teeth. Are you giving me a hint? Or showing off? No. No, miss. Kusikusa Shiger was helpless. She clearly didn't raise her upper body on purpose, so it was not her fault. But the current position did make Kwamiya Ryoko feel uncomfortable. Kusikusa Shiger felt very guilty about this. After careful consideration, she secretly transmitted her voice back, then, Miss, shall we change positions? Anyway, you are flat, and it will be more comfortable down there. Kwamiya Ryoko instantly clenched her fists and pinched Kusikusa Shiger's buttocks. If you dare to make a sound, you will die. Miss. Kusikusa Nakamura blushed. She felt wronged, but at the same time, she felt comfortable when Ryoko pinched her. It looked like he had used a lot of strength. However, she was at the original infant stage after all. Actually, the pinch did not hurt at all. Instead, it was very comfortable. It felt like acupuncture. Ryoko Kamiya pinched Kusikusa for a while and found that Kusikusa was enjoying it. She suddenly felt uncomfortable. She pinched Chun Chao's face hard and said fiercely, I'll teach you a lesson when we get back. At this moment, Jiang Yingying's room was completely silent, and the door opened again. It was a strange aura, which he could tell from the result of his spiritual sense perception. The 4 people under the bed had never seen this person before. Kwamiya Ryoko saw the appearance of the person through the shared vision of the spirit ghost in the corner of the room. This person's face was covered, and from his figure, he was a man with a strong physique. There was a hint of wretchedness in his temperament. One look and you could tell that he was not a good person. True enough. Just as Kwamiya Ryoko made this judgment, the wretched masked man took off his mask. He was plain-looking, the kind of face that could be drowned in the crowd at first glance. The only distinguishing feature is a hairy black mole on the chin. He seemed to be talking to someone loudly, and he didn't seem to be worried that Jiang Yingying would be woken up. I didn't expect high school girls to be so gullible. Boss, don't worry. I'll take her back for you. After saying this, Ryoko put her hand on her forehead. Fortunately, Lotus Sun had called her and asked her to come over and take a look. This girl was too worrisome. Without the slightest precaution, she would be swallowed alive when she fell asleep. The scrawny man came to the bed in a few steps, lifted the quilt, and found that Jiang Yingying was sleeping soundly. For a moment, he was stunned by her sweet sleeping posture. After a few seconds of silence, the scrawny man swallowed. Boss, this Miss Sun is too beautiful. It would be a pity to kill her. When the person on the other end of the line heard this, he couldn't help laughing. This is the last one. After this one, we won't have to work for the rest of our lives. It doesn't matter. Anyway, in order to compete with others, this girl easily believed my folk prescription that can raise her combat strength in a short time. In the end, she dug a hole for herself. It's still early, you can use her. Okay. Okay. Thank you, boss. Is half an hour enough? I want you to bring her over at the appointed time. Enough, enough. The scrawny man nodded repeatedly, wiping his saliva as he spoke. When the 4 people under the bed heard this, they instantly understood. It turned out that this was another group of people who had mistaken Jiang Yingying for Lotus Sun. The corners of Kwamiya Ryoko's mouth twitched. In fact, she didn't feel that Jiang Yingying and Lotus Sun were very similar, especially after getting to know the two of them and becoming familiar with their personalities. Kwamiya Ryoko wouldn't have the illusion that they looked very similar. Including the silver-skinned man from the last time, this was already the second wave of people who had mistaken her for someone else. This man, as well as the man among the aliens, could it be that all of them were blind? At that moment, the scrawny man let out another sinister laugh. Miss Sun, I'm sorry to have offended you. Today, I offer my hundreds of years of virginity to you. He was just about to throw himself onto the bed. At that critical moment, Li Xian's Zhang Zidong had already teleported behind him and grabbed his shoulders from each side. Then, a crisp sound like firecrackers rang out from the man's left and right arms. Li Xian and Zhang Zidong both held back and didn't directly tear off his arms, otherwise the splattering blood would dirty Jiang Yingying's room. They simply shattered the bones in the man's arms with Qi Jin. Their actions were so fast that Kwamiya Ryoko was flabbergasted. When Kwamiya Ryoko came out from under the bed, she felt goosebumps all over her body when she saw the scrawny man in front of her. Pervert, too perverted. Junko, go. As Kwamiya Ryoko's female bodyguard for so many years, from a woman's point of view, Kusekusa Shigure seemed to be much more ruthless than Li Xian and Zhang Zidong. She opened her claws like an eagle and instantly grabbed the scrawny man's vital part. A painful scream rang through the whole room. This move, separating yolk and egg white hand, was her unique skill to defend herself from perverts. Li Xian and Zhang Zidong felt the pain just by looking at it. Perhaps the scrawny man's scream was so shrill that it finally startled Jiang Yingying, who was in the deep water. Her eyebrows twitched slightly, and then she slowly opened her eyes. Right in front of her window, including the scrawny man, who was foaming at the mouth and being carried by Li Xian, there were a total of 5 people. They formed a circle around her bed and stared at her with eyes that they thought were friendly. The next day, Jiang Yingying was sent to the hospital for psychological treatment. Lying on the bed next to her was Yi Jiang, who hadn't fully recovered yet. Chapter 1624. Wang Ling heard that when Jiang Yingying had been sent to the hospital, her face had been black and blue and her hair had been a mess. She was still wearing her pajamas, and she kept twitching as if she was possessed. As the initiators of this incident, Kwamiya Ryoko, Li Xian, and Zhang Zipei also felt guilty about what had happened. Who knew that this little girl would have the guts to move out alone, but in the end, she was so timid. That night, Jiang Yingying was sent to the hospital. Very quickly, Wang Ling received a text message from Lotus Sunday. There weren't many words in the message, so it was easy to understand. Lotus Sun was blaming herself. Because she was the one who sent Kwamiya Ryoko, she did not expect things to turn out like this. Looking at this message, Wang Ling typed a few words, then deleted them again. In the end, he didn't send anything. He didn't know why Lotus Sun had changed a lot recently. She was very careful in everything she did, and no matter what she did, she seemed to think from his point of view. In Wang Ling's view, this was just a trivial matter. The main culprit was the thousand-faced man who had been plotting behind the scenes and had nothing to do with Lotus Sunday. Jiang Yingying only resembled Lotus Sun a little, but the truth was that if you knew both of them at the same time, the difference between them was really huge. Impatient and quiet, stubborn and flexible, childish and mature, a string of words instantly appeared in Wang Ling's mind to describe the feelings these two people gave him. On the other side, in an open area in the northern suburbs of Songhai City, a glass elevator leading straight to an underground laboratory suddenly emerged from two platforms on either side, accompanied by a rumbling mechanical sound. Several men in black suits and sunglasses followed an old woman with fluffy hair into the elevator. Her hair was white, and there were crow's feet at the corners of her eyes, but her complexion was excellent. She looked like an elegant grandmother. After entering the glass elevator, the old lady squinted her eyes and asked, "Is Shouchong still resisting?" "Right now, he's wholeheartedly trying to open the door to infinity, but he didn't expect us to beat him to it. Now, he is still a distance away from the final step, and we are only a little bit away from success. He would never have thought that we would be able to enter the secret realm from the back door. If he had a brain like that, Master Tianji wouldn't have expelled him back then," the old woman said with a smile. After the glass elevator descended to a certain coordinate, it was transferred to the encrypted channel. In order to ensure the confidentiality of this underground laboratory in the northern suburbs, there was a huge maze above the laboratory. The maze would change every day. Only by entering the correct password would the glass elevator enter the maze's exit and successfully reach the underground. This underground labyrinth was the masterpiece of the old woman. Her name was Lu Renfeng. Her Taoist name was Lady Feng Chu. However, Lu Renfeng hadn't heard anyone mention this name for a long time. After the shocking upheaval in the Heavenly Mysteries Sect's cabinet, she had occupied the sect's core technology until now. She had turned the Heavenly Mysteries sect into an underground scientific power, specializing in the development of black technology magical treasures for the tycoons from all over the world. In Lu Renfeng's opinion, Shouchong wanting to challenge Tianji by himself was just an ant trying to shake a tree. At the exit of the underground laboratory, Lu Renfeng walked out of the elevator with her hands behind her back. She had barely taken 2 steps when a member of the intelligence department hurried over. "Madam, the previous plan has failed. We didn't catch that Miss Lotus Sunday. Who told you to catch her?" The corner of Lu Renfeng's mouth twitched. But Madam gave us a photo. It's clearly this son." The person took out the photo and looked at it carefully. Finally, he found some discrepancies. The photo was immediately covered in fine beads of sweat. "Sorry, madam, we made a mistake. The person I want is this girl called Jiang Yingying. No matter what, you have to bring her here. I just want her alive." "You can do whatever you want," Lu Renfeng said. "So, has this matter been taken care of?" "Right now, that Miss Lotus Sun has suffered a shock and is receiving treatment. The brother who was caught has already committed suicide by poison, so there's no danger of him being exposed," the person from the intelligence department said. Tell your section chief. If there's a next time, I won't let him off." Yes, at this critical moment, Lu Renfeng didn't want something like this to happen again. Fortunately, this matter had been dealt with in a timely and appropriate manner. As long as that Jiang Yingying was brought to her, everything would be under control. Compared with Shouchong's method of gathering hundreds of extremely powerful cultivators to break through the front gate of the secret land and force open the entrance, she only needed Jiang Yingying. She only needed Jiang Yingying to do it. Although this grand plan didn't sound very scary to Jiang Yingying, but Lu Renfeng felt that perhaps this was fate. As the child who had been chosen back then, Jiang Yingying had this kind of mission, to become that sacrificial pawn. At the same time, Lotus Sun was on her way to the hospital where Jiang Yingying was. Her heart was full of apprehension and unease, even though she had just sent Wang Ling a message. Although she had just sent a message to Wang Ling, she didn't get a response from him. "Miss, don't worry too much. Classmate Jiang is fine. Her condition is much lighter than that of General Yi's adopted son. Classmate Yi Jiang's condition is more serious. She's just a little frightened. As long as she takes this mind-calming and brain-nourishing pill we gave her, I'm sure she'll recover in no time," Jiang Xiaoche comforted her in the car. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, feeling a little nervous in his heart. He just knew that this little girl would cause trouble again. How long had it been since the incident on Ancient Street stopped? She had so easily believed the words of those villains, and really thought that she could rely on folk remedies to improve her strength in a short period of time. Jiang Xiaoche gritted his teeth and sped up toward the hospital. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared like a ghost on the originally empty road up ahead. Bang! Jiang Xiaoche thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, and by the time he reacted, the car had already crashed into this person. The airbag instantly popped out. When Jiang Xiaoche moved his face away from the airbag, he saw a person covered in black mucus block his car with a hand that only had 3 fingers. This was a biochemical coat which Lu Renfeng had developed. It could be worn by smearing it on the body, and could substantially increase a cultivator's battle strength based on their realm. "Miss, this isn't good. Are you hurt?" Jiang Xiaoche was utterly shocked. He turned his head to look at Lotus Sun, and only breathed a slight sigh of relief when he saw that she was sitting in the back seat unscathed. "I'm fine. What's the situation outside?" "There's a person covered in black mucus. Are they coming for me?" Lotus Sun sighed, looking as if she had already made her preparations. But in the next second, the mucus man spoke. Standing in front of the car, he sneered. "Classmate Jiang Yingying, we'll have to trouble you to come with us." Chapter 1625. She didn't expect that someone would kidnap her in broad daylight. However, when the slimy man said her name, she was stunned at first, then a look of disbelief appeared in her eyes. Jiang Yingying, how did she become Jiang Yingying again? Lotus Sun held her forehead and stared at the slime man in front of her. "I'm sorry, but if you're looking for classmate Jiang, I'm afraid you've got the wrong person. I'm really not Jiang Yingying. You don't want to admit it." The slimy man frowned slightly. He glanced at a tree on the side and raised his arm. In an instant, his arm was stretched infinitely in his sight, like a black whip lashing at the tree trunk. The power of a single strike instantly turned the old parasol tree into dust, but this didn't scare her. She continued to sit in the car with her arms crossed. "It seems you don't believe me when I say I'm not Jiang Yingying." "Of course not." The slime man sneered. "Don't think I don't know that Jiang Wuxing went to see Miss Lotus Sun today. The intelligence department said that they had a secret discussion in the student union office for a long time, so they must be discussing some swapping plan." Lotus Sun, slimy man, after the analysis and reasoning of the head of the intelligence department, he concluded that Miss Lotus Sun had no choice but to agree to Jiang Wuxing's request to switch identities in order to protect student Jiang Yingying. "The two of you look very similar to each other. As long as you make a slight change in your hairstyle, it will be enough to deceive everyone." Hearing this, Lotus Sun sighed slightly in her heart. She didn't have the strength to complain about the director of the intelligence department, who was so illogical. She was just curious about the organization that was acting behind the scenes. In short, judging from the current situation, Jiang Yingying was indeed being targeted. From the start, the other party's target was Jiang Yingying, not him. Moreover, the other party was now certain that they had exchanged identities. In a sense, Jiang Yingying, who was lying in the hospital, was absolutely safe. Lotus Sun didn't know what these people were up to, but this seemed to be a good opportunity to figure things out. "All right, I can go with you. But you have to let this driver go. He's innocent." "That's easy. We only want you to come with us. We don't mind letting go of other unrelated people. The slimy man spread his hands and laughed. You're quite smart, but why didn't you admit it earlier? You're obviously Jiang Yingying. I didn't admit it at all right? I clearly wasn't. She was rather speechless at the intelligence-gathering ability of these people, and she deeply suspected that the chief of the intelligence department might have been suffering from the side effects of watching too many novels. This was too imaginative. He was even more daring than her. Marshal Jiang did come to the student union office to look for her. But that was not the case in the plot at all. In a situation where there was no evidence, he actually made up a plot in his own mind. How could he do that? Stop pretending, Jiang Yingying. You are. I'm not. You've already decided to leave with me. What's the point of dwelling on this? Lotus Sun sighed. All right, look. How dare you say that you're not Jiang Yingying? The slimy man snorted as if he had everything under control. Miss. Seeing that Lotus Sun was about to leave with the slimy man, Jiang Xiaoche hurriedly got out of the car. He opened his hand, and a spiritual light appeared in his hand as he tried to summon a spirit sword to fight back. Humph, behave yourself. However, the slimy man was extremely fast. He suddenly kicked Jiang Xiaoche in the ribs. Before he could summon the spirit sword, Jiang Xiaoche felt a huge force on his chest, which sent him flying backward. He crashed into the guardrail on the side of the road and fainted on the spot. Don't worry. He won't die. I didn't use too much strength in this kick. But this road is very remote, and whether anyone will come to save him will depend on his luck. With that, the slimy man took out a capsule and smashed it on the ground. With a puff of smoke, a modified black van appeared in front of Lotus Sunday. This was a disposable space capsule used to store large equipment. As long as it was smashed on the ground, the items stored in the capsule would be released. Get in, Jiang Yingying. Student Jiang Yingying. The slimy man sneered as he escorted Lotus Sun into the trunk of the van. Lotus Sun was surprised to find that this was an unmanned vehicle. Everything had been set up. As soon as she got in, the van began to move automatically according to the preset route. Moreover, there was a spiritual barrier in the trunk, which was used to block spiritual senses, so that normal cultivators couldn't sense the outside world through it. Of course, it was impossible to block the current Lotus Sun with this barrier alone. But if it was the real Jiang Yingying probably wouldn't even know where she would be taken. What's your purpose? With her hands tied behind her back, Lotus Sun sat in her seat with a very calm expression on her face. No wonder you're the granddaughter of that warrior saint. You're quite a hero. The slimy man couldn't help but praise her, and then he spread his hands. But I don't know why we're here. Our intelligence department is only responsible for collecting information and arresting people. Since you know I'm Warrior Saint Zhang's granddaughter, aren't you afraid of offending him? Lotus Sun asked again. Since she had decided to pretend to be Jiang Yingying for the time being, she thought she might be able to use this identity to get some useful information. But when the slimy man heard this, he stared at her and sized her up. As if he had heard the funniest joke in the world, he put on a funny expression. Don't worry, the venerable warrior saint won't find us. He can still get along well with that student Jiang Yingying and be her model grandfather. What do you mean? Lotus Sun didn't understand. Lin Sanjia was confused, but no matter how she asked, the slimy man remained silent for the rest of the journey, not saying a word. In the van, Lotus Sun expanded her spiritual sense and passed through the barrier. She found that the van had been driving in circles on the road. This group of people had a very strong sense of anti-reconnaissance. They had left their traces everywhere, and had specially set up one-time teleportation arrays at hidden intersections, so that the van frequently shuttled back and forth on every road in the city, making it impossible to tell where it was going. After driving for about 2 hours, Lotus Sun found that the van had been transported by a teleportation array to an open area in the northern suburbs. At the same time, the slimy man, who had been silent for a long time, finally spoke again. "Boss, I've brought student Jiang Yingying. Are you going to see Madam right away?" On the other side of the phone came the electronically processed voice of the head of the intelligence department. "Madam is a germaphobe, and I've already said that you must wash her clean before sending her back." "I see." At this moment, the slimy man smiled. "Then can I wash her myself?" Chapter 1626. When the slime man said this, he didn't realize that a crisis was about to befall them. This was really too perverted. The thought of being touched by a man other than Wang Ling gave Lotus Sun a wave of disgust. In particular, this slime man was extremely wretched. She had wanted to sneak in a little deeper and get rid of the entire organization in one fell swoop. But now, there was something very wrong with the organization's ideology. To actually lay a hand on an underage girl in broad daylight. Was he even human? Although Lotus Sun really disapproved of some of Jiang Yingying's methods, and the two of them actually had some conflicts, even if it was for Jiang Wuxing's sake, as long as she still called Wuxing uncle, she could at least guarantee her safety. Lotus Sun endured it all the way until she was brought into a shower room by the slimy man. The door was closed. Only Lotus Sun and the slime man were left in the base shower room. The slime man took off the palms of his biochemical coat and rubbed his hands together with a treacherous expression. "Miss Jiang, I'm sorry, I couldn't help it." "I'm sorry, I couldn't help it either," Lotus Sun said with her head bowed slightly. The slime man couldn't see her face clearly, but he was overjoyed when he heard this. "Ha ha ha. I never thought we'd actually hit it off. Since you can't help it anymore, let's get started." Get started, my ass." As soon as he said this, Lotus Sun couldn't help but stare at the wretched slime man in front of her. A beam of blue sword chi shot out, and a powerful sword pressure fell with the force of 1,000 caddies. The slime man fell to his knees on the spot, and his face trembled violently with an incredulous expression on his face. "You..." As a beautiful girl who had received compulsory education all year round, Lotus Sun almost never cursed, but she had actually lost her composure just now because of the slime man. This caused the anger in her heart to burn even more. "That's it." Lotus Sun pointed at the slime man and knocked him out with sword chi. She was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. Just knocking him out wasn't enough to vent her anger. At that moment, Sun Yinger suddenly popped her head out and said, "Should we castrate him?" "Wouldn't that be too bloody?" Lotus Sun cupped her face, still a little hesitant. "It's fine, there won't be any external injuries. I've actually been studying this recently." Sun Yinger laughed mischievously and said, "You know, as long as that big pressure on me for a day, I will never be able to stand out." So you want to castrate CEO-ing?" Lotus Sun sucked in a cold breath. She felt that Sun Yinger was courting death. Compared with Wang Ling's blockhead, Wang Ying's way of expressing her emotions was indeed more radical, but Lotus Sun couldn't be more envious of her initiative. If that blockhead could be enlightened one day, she would probably be overjoyed. Of course. She felt that Sun Yinger did not know how lucky she was. But it was useless. This guy was always looking for trouble. In the end, it was only his waist that was pitiful, and the spirits of the planets that were trembling every day for fear of being crushed by Wang Ying. "So, how do we do this?" Lotus Sun asked. "Just cut it off." "Oh, I'm not talking about cutting his body. We just need to remove that part of his shadow," Sun Yinger replied. "That works?" Lotus Sun was astonished. "Of course. There won't be any external injuries. And the point is that there won't be any problems. It's just that he won't be able to get up again. This process was faster than Lotus Sun had imagined. Sun Yinger's technique was also more adept than she had imagined. It was just a small thing that was 1 or 2 inches long. Sun Yinger directly raised the knife in her hand and swiftly cut it off. Done. At that moment, Lotus Sun's mood was in fact exceptionally complicated. But this wretched man had received the punishment he deserved, and her depressed mood instantly eased up a lot. So what do we do now? Sun Yinger asked. Take off his biochemical coat first. We'll pretend to be him and directly sneak in, Lotus Sun said. Fish, but we have to bring someone with us. Aren't they looking for Jiang Yingying? If you pretend to be him, what about Jiang Yingying? Sun Yinger asked. That's easy. Lotus Sun suddenly laughed and gazed at Sun Yinger. Holy shit. Don't tell me you want me to pretend to be Jiang Yingying. You look the same as me to begin with. In any case, they're face blind. As long as you change your hairstyle, they probably won't be able to tell us apart. Besides, these secular cultivators won't be able to do anything to you. Sun Yinger, Rong, are you sure you want me to pretend? Lotus Sun, there's no one more suitable than you, Sun Yinger, then I'll tell you first, if things get out of hand and there's no way to clean it up, I won't care. If that happens, this base will probably be razed to the ground. There was a hint of tiredness on her face. Then let's destroy it. Hurry up. Sun Yinger, in the conference room outside the base, Lu Renfeng sat upright on a leather sofa, looking like she had everything planned out. At that moment, a tall and thin man in a black suit pushed open the door and entered. He wore a special medal on his body to show that he was a member of the management team. His name was Hang Chuan, the head of the intelligence department in Lu Renfeng's team. Madam, we've successfully brought Jiang Yingying here, Hang Chuan said. It seems a little slower than expected. Madam, please calm down. First, that little girl is a little clever. She actually found the eldest daughter of Huagua Water Curtain Group and swapped identities, trying to use a similar appearance to swap a raccoon for the crown prince. Speaking up to this point, Hang Chuan smiled. Fortunately, I saw through this plan. Capturing this Miss Jiang was a daunting experience, but not a mishap. Second, I know that Madam is a neat freak, so I had Zhang San take her to take a bath before coming here. Perhaps that Zhang San kid was just dawdling. You guys really know how to enjoy yourselves. Hearing this, Lu Renfeng's expression was as calm as an ancient well. She would turn a blind eye to her subordinates' eccentricities as long as they weren't too out of line. After working in the dark underground all year round, they had to have an outlet to vent their frustrations. After being sacrificed, Jiang Yingying was going to die anyway. It seemed like there was nothing wrong with enjoying an adult's happiness before dying. Forget it. Lu Renfeng waved her hand, her expression gentle. You're sensible enough to bring her to take a bath and see me. Madam, you flatter me. So, is she here? She's already at the door. Bring her in, Lu Renfeng said. She didn't even look sideways, not even lifting her eyes. A moment later, the door opened. Lotus Sun escorted Sun Yinger, who was disguised as Jiang Yingying, in. Sun Yinger didn't dare speak at all, for fear of giving herself away. Only then did Lu Renfeng get up from her seat and walk over to stare at her, sizing her up. The atmosphere instantly became tense. She looked at her for a full 2 or 3 minutes. Only then did Lu Renfeng say slowly, Jiang Yingying, it really is you. Hearing this, Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger immediately let out long sighs of relief. But to be reasonable, this face-blind person was too much. Well done, Zhang San. Lu Renfeng then looked up at Lotus Sunday. What are you standing there for? hurry up and thank Madam, said Heng Chuan, the chief of the intelligence department. Lotus Sun bowed. What are you talking about? Why are you so reserved today? Heng Chuan laughed. Madam, please don't take offense. It's probably the first time he's seen you, and he's awed by your majesty. He's a capable young man, he can be promoted later. Many thanks, Madam, Heng Chuan said with cupped fists in a very sociable manner. At this moment, he looked at Lotus Sun and frowned slightly. Come to think of it, Zhang San. Speaking of which, Zhang San, have you been training your chest muscles recently? Judging from this biochemical suit, your chest muscles seem pretty big. For some reason, when she heard this, she actually felt a little happy. Chapter 1627. The sirens of the ambulance rose and fell, and when Jiang Xiaoqie woke up, he was already on his way to the hospital. His injuries were pretty serious. When the sticky man's flying leg had landed on him, he had clearly heard the sound of his ribs breaking. This damn thing. Ever since he was young, even his mother had never hit him. Damn it. May you die without descendants. When Jiang Xiaoqie gradually regained consciousness, this was the first thought that popped into his mind. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes, as if he had been startled awake. Miss Lotus Sun, they took her away. Mr. Jiang, please calm down. The police are already on the case, said a female nurse. This part of the road is so remote, how did you find me? Jiang Xiaoqie asked suspiciously. Someone called the police. Who? I'm not sure. But it sounded like a teenager's voice. Teenager. Jiang Xiaoqie was thoughtful. Elsewhere, in the study of the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling was finishing his homework for the day. When Lotus Sun had been kidnapped, he had actually already sensed it. Given Lotus Sun's current strength, plus the fact that Sun Ying'er was with her, he didn't need to worry about her safety. But in the end, he had still called the police. Now, Lotus Sun had already snuck in. His call to the police could be said to have affected the situation as a whole. Once the government got involved in this matter, Lu Renfeng's underground research team would be surrounded. This was the first reason why Wang Ling had called the police. The second reason was that he was going to help Songhai First Prison's Mahjong trio find a new cellmate. These four had been missing one for a long time. Wang Ling felt that it was time to arrange for new people to move in. As for Jiang Xiaoqie, Wang Ling had just saved him in passing. He didn't like this person. But after all, Jiang Xiaoqie was now working for Lotus Sun, and the driver's life was also a life. Now, Wang Ling actually didn't need to worry about anything else. He felt that Lotus Sun would be fine. It was just Lu Renfeng, and it wasn't enough for him to make a move. Thus, he settled his thoughts and decided to seriously complete the exercise set in front of him. The monthly exams were coming up, and it was time to calculate marks and keep them down. However, he realized that after writing only a few words, his thoughts started to drift. He wasn't annoyed, depressed, or uneasy. He just felt that this feeling came out of nowhere. Because of the talisman, he had become an emotionless piece of wood in everyone's eyes. Even now, he still didn't feel any emotion. It was just that his mind would inexplicably fall into a blank state. It was as if something was suppressing him. The pen in his hand stopped, and he felt that he had inexplicably been a little down on his homework today. On the bed, Wang Ying pretended to sleep with one hand under her head. She quietly opened her left eye a slit and looked at Wang Ling. If you're really worried, go and take a look yourself. Hearing this, Wang Ling muttered in his heart and couldn't help thinking, why don't you go yourself? Wang Ling didn't retort, mainly because Wang Ying's brain circuitry was connected to his. He could hear it anyway. The man on the bed leisurely crossed his legs, a leisurely expression on his face. Have you ever seen a wife castrate her husband? She actually wants to castrate me. Who gave her the guts? I'm now thinking of how to torment her tonight. Before I figure it out, I can't be bothered to go. Wang Ling, sure enough, Wang Ying knew all about it. This wasn't strange. Sun Yinger could still use her Shadow Dao ability normally for now. But in the end, Wang Ying was in a favorable position. 139 especially recently at home, since Loopy Toad had started to help Wang Wan change her diapers, Wang Ying had also started to learn how to coax little girl Wan. Now that things had gotten better, little girl Wan naturally had a good impression of Wang Ying. Thus, Wang Ying's Shadow Dao authority was naturally one level higher than Sun Yinger's. This was probably what the so-called higher officials could crush people to death meant. Actually, Wang Ling couldn't tell at all that Wang Ying was the type of person who would patiently take care of a child. He called this adapting in advance. He said that if he and Sun Yinger got together in the future, he wouldn't need to put in so much effort to learn, and would be able to do it right away. After hearing this, Wang Ling was dumbfounded on the spot. It had to be said that this guy Wang Ying was really prepared for a rainy day. The girl hadn't even agreed yet, and he had already started to call her his wife. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He was clearly such a low-key person, so why was the shadow he had conjured so shameless? It was Wang Ling who had helped report Lotus Sun's arrest to the police. Very quickly, Huaxiao Alliance was alerted by this incident. This clearly wasn't an ordinary kidnapping case, and it would be difficult for the local cultivation police to deal with it. Thus, when Old Man Sun heard about it, he was so anxious that he directly called Battle Sect. In fact, Battle Sect had already taken action before Old Man Sun had called. But this was actually against the rules, so Huaxiao Alliance still had to report it. Senior Immortal. She's my only granddaughter, nothing must happen to her. Over the phone, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal heard Sun Yiyuan sob for the first time. He sighed in his heart. It was a pity that the old man currently knew nothing about his precious granddaughter's strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so anxious. Once Lotus Sun's strength was exposed, it would directly affect Wang Ling. Thus, this was a top secret at Battle Sect's core level, and even Old Man Sun couldn't tell him directly at the moment. Because even if he did, he might not believe him. Who would have thought that a girl at the Foundation establishment stage would be able to fight a Dao god on her own in just a few short days? In order to appease the old man, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could only say over the phone, "Brother Sun, rest assured, Miss Lotus Sun's business is my business. My Battle Sect will definitely gather the strength of the entire sect to rescue Miss Lotus Sunday. At the same time, to prevent any accidents, we have a full medical team on our side. I promise Brother Sun that we will definitely bring Miss Lotus Sun back safely. Thank you, everyone." Old Man Sun's voice trembled as he hung up the phone. "He's really anxious," said grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "Sect leader, what should we do now?" Chua asked at that moment. "Even if Miss Lotus Sun has the strength to fight, if we don't do anything, we might still arouse suspicion. So, we can only take action," said grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "And the bigger the better. Gather the strength of the entire sect." "No." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head. Today's Battle Sect wasn't what it used to be, it had allies all over the world. This was grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's initial plan for the Grand Alliance of Cultivators. When the intelligence network and all kinds of resources of Battle Sect's allies all over the world were connected, no matter how well Lu Renfeng's team hid themselves, they would be exposed in broad daylight in an instant. It's not gathering the strength of the entire sect. At that moment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said solemnly, "It's gathering the strength of the entire world." The strength of the entire world. Zhuo was shocked. Yes, the strength of the entire world. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, I think this is why Brother Ling called the police. He wanted the authorities to step in and blow up the situation. What we want is precisely this wave of momentum that can completely scare off those lawbreakers who are secretly plotting against Miss Sunday. Thus, it will serve as a warning to the rest. So that's what Shifu meant. Realization dawned on Ajua, and he hurriedly cupped his fists. As expected of Senior Immortal, Ajua has learned his lesson. Well said, well said. In front of Battle Sect's true venerated hall, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal flicked his sleeves confidently. Come. Issue the sect leader's order. In the distance, Wang Ling was stupefied at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's big move. All he did was call the police. Chapter 1628. Sect Leader's Order. The entire sect. Disciples at the Golden Core stage and above, assemble in the North Square immediately. Sect Leader. The entire sect. Disciples at the Golden Core stage and below, prepare for battle immediately. Commanding Elders, please take your positions. Clang. 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 When Battle Sect's Grand Assembly bell rang out from inside the sect, tens of thousands of disciples swiftly returned to their positions according to the instructions issued by the command center. It was just that this wasn't a drill. This was a serious battle. Currently, Battle Sect, which was recognized as the #1 sect in the world, was actually going to take the initiative to fight. For a moment, all the disciples were in a daze. When the Battle Sect disciples came back to their senses, they were replaced by a strong sense of excitement. Although Battle Sect hadn't been established for a long time, all the disciples who joined knew that their sect had a strong foundation. This was definitely going to be a rich battle. A rich battle that they might not be able to wait for 8 lifetimes. It had to be known that in an era of peace, cultivation sects that were partially under the jurisdiction of the government had to be approved for such a large-scale assembly to prepare for war. The relationship between Battle Sect and Huaxiao Alliance was inseparable. It was impossible for this large-scale operation to go unreported. If other sects declared war, there might be voices of doubt in society. But Battle Sect was different. This was a sect that had joined Huaxiao Alliance, and represented Huaxiao Alliance. So here was the question, which force on earth was going to challenge Battle Sect now? Less than a quarter of an hour after the sect leader's order was issued, all the disciples in the sect had been gathered and started to work according to the original plan. Crispy Noodles, Dao Monarch and Keone were in charge of the command center. Since all the disciples at the Golden Core stage and above had been transferred out, it was impossible for the sect to be leaderless. With these two people holding the fort, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was naturally very reassured. Battle Sect's underground command center had been personally designed by Wang Ming, and it was full of high-tech déjà vu. A golden magic ball floated in the center of the command center. This magic ball was connected to every inch of Earth's coordinates, and was connected to Battle Sect's exclusive satellite with very little error. Most importantly, this command magic ball could determine the outcome of a battle from 1,000 li away, and see everything it wanted to see. Does the sect leader have any requests? Keone asked. He hadn't been in Battle Sect for long, but Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal liked him very much. He was a very capable and practical person. Most importantly, he was a Ph.D. in the field of war and cultivation weaponry. This kind of knowledge wasn't something an ordinary person could possess. Furthermore, he never asked too many questions, and only cared about completing the tasks that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Ajua had assigned him. This was something that Kun had a good impression of. It's best if we can capture them all alive, Crispy Noodles said. Capture them all alive. Corn frowned slightly. I know it's difficult, said Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Keep the enemy's casualty rate below 1%. Of course, destroy all the enemy bases. Understood. Korn nodded solemnly. Right now, he could only try his best. He knew that the main reason why the higher-ups wanted to capture him alive was to find out what Lu Renfeng was up to. But to be honest, even a 1% casualty rate seemed to be very difficult. Because according to the information that Kuhn had gathered so far, the battle sect was not the only one in charge of fighting. By you. Such a large-scale operation could be said to be like pulling one hair and moving the whole body. He didn't know Lu Renfeng, and had practically never heard of her before. This young Madame Phoenix seemed to be a little famous in the Cultivation Academy of Science, but in Kuhn's eyes, this Lu Renfeng was just an unlucky egg. Less than 10 minutes after Battle sect leader order was issued, this matter was further amplified through the spread of modern information on the internet. There were a lot of sects that received orders to assist in battle, and one of them was the Skylight Alliance, which had previously tried to unite but had in fact failed miserably. For a previous story, see Chapter 819. Before Battle sect had been established, the 17 sky-level sects in the Alliance had protected each other and blocked the advancement of the sects behind them. On the day Battle sect had opened for business, President Liu Yuming of the Alliance had been under tremendous pressure and had tried to make things difficult for them, but in the end, he had failed. Especially after learning that Battle sect's backer was Huaxiao Alliance, Liu Yuming had almost had the urge to stab himself to death. Since Battle sect's existence had broken the long-standing balance of order between Huaxiao nation sects, the alliance had long since ceased to exist in name. On the surface, they were still united as one family, but in fact, there were some problems with each sect's operations. A few days ago, many sect leaders had been unable to withstand the pressure, and had wanted Liu Yuming to represent them in negotiating a partnership with Battle sect. But after all, he had done such a shameful thing, and Liu Yuming himself was at a loss. But what Liu Yuming hadn't expected was, today, the alliance had actually received a battle invitation from Battle sect. Overwhelmed by the favor, Liu Yuming immediately gathered all the sky-level sect leaders of the alliance. Everyone, what do you think of this? Liu Yuming asked. Given Battle sect's power and heritage, why would they need our help in battle? This is clearly for the sake of building momentum. I'm afraid it's for others to see. Leaping sect master analyzed. Since Battle sect's rise, everyone's sects have been more or less affected. To be honest, in the past, I definitely wouldn't have gone. But for the sake of my livelihood, I think it's worth a try. Radish King's sect leader Sun Hanja said, I heard from others in the circle that sect leader grenade throwing has always been a righteous person. Now that he has reached the true venerable stage, he doesn't seem to be a petty person. I will definitely accept this olive branch. Even if you guys object, I will still go. Brother Sun, there's no need to be in such a hurry, we didn't say we won't go. Then what do you all mean? Go. Go now. At this point, all the sect leaders spoke up, their emotions stirring. Liu Yuming saw this and already had an idea in his heart, then it looks like none of the sect leaders present have any objections. Now, let's start counting the number of Golden Core stage and above disciples of our 17 sky-level sections. Currently, we have gathered our 17 sky-level sects, with a total of 36,000 Golden Core stage and above disciples. According to Battle sect's battle invitation, all sect leaders, please lead your sect's Golden Core stage and above disciples to gather in the northern suburbs at 10 o'clock tonight. After Liu Yuming finished, the remaining 16 sect leaders all stood up, cupped their fists and said in unison. We will obey your orders. Rush to Battle sect's aid. The scale of this group battle was so grand that it caused people to be flabbergasted. Liu Yuming had originally thought that Battle sect and their 17 sky-level sects were already the limit. However, after Liu Yuming accepted the battle invitation and assigned the mission, he joined the Battle sect 1225's temporary command group chat. Only at this moment did he suddenly realize that things were not as simple as he had imagined. Because, in this temporary command group, more than half of his friends in the cultivation world had already joined. These people were all sect leaders from all over the world, both at home and abroad. At this time, the number of people in the group was still soaring. 5 minutes after Liu Yuming joined the 1225 command group, there were already 270 sect leaders of Earth level and above sects gathered in the group. Chapter 1629. At the same time, on Sun Island. The Jiugong family. The Jiugong family had successfully completed the Sun Island student exchange program between No. 60 High School and Kyushu High School. Now that the Jiugong family had annexed Sun Island's largest underworld gang, the Star-Picking Group, and had a deep strategic partnership with Wagwa Water Curtain Group behind them, they were truly like the sun at high noon. In the main hall of the Jiugong family, the news that Lotus Sun had been captured by the young phoenix had reached them. Head of the family, Jiugong Akaji, was furious. What? Miss Lotus Sun was captured? How preposterous! Who on earth is this young Madam Phoenix? She must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Father, please calm down. Hideki said, according to the information our Jiugong family has gathered from the Sun Island Grey Sect branch, this young Madam Phoenix is an underground scientist who has been targeted by the International Alliance of Cultivators for a long time. She's very famous in the underground scientific community for conducting inhumane and immoral scientific experiments. Hearing this, Jiugong Akaji frowned slightly. Somehow, he felt like he had heard of this before. Father, Huaxiao Alliance has already dispatched people from Battle Sect. I think we should, even if we don't do anything, but we can't not do it. Jiugong Akaji said, our Jiugong family and the Sun family are now working closely together. Even though our Jiugong family did not receive a battle invitation from the Battle Sect this time, how do you know that this is not a test? Hearing this, Hideki was suddenly enlightened. Father, do you mean that Battle Sect deliberately didn't send us an invitation? That's very likely. Jiugong Akaji nodded. Given the relationship between Battle Sect and the Sun family, they should know that our Jiugong family has already established a partnership with Wagwa Water Curtain Group. So this time, it seems like they're testing our attitude. Saying this, Jiugong Akaji couldn't help laughing. Actually, even if they hadn't been testing, he would have taken action. After all, he, the head of the Jiugong family, had already joined the Grey Sect. Now that his sect leader was in trouble. He was a heretic. How could he not save him? It was just that it might be too late to send someone over from Sun Island now. If they were too late, they wouldn't be able to express their loyalty in time. Immortal Harmony. Jiugong Akaji called the name of the head steward of the Jiugong family. Luminous Immortal Harmony heard this and immediately stepped forward. Subordinate is here. Tell them to use all the connections our Jiugong family has in Huaxiao Nation that we can use, said Jiugong Akaji. In fact, in order to expand the Jiugong family's business in Huaxiao Nation, they had already set up a base in Huaxiao Nation for many years. Regarding this point, Immortal and Ming, as the head butler, naturally knew about it. However, he was worried that this was not enough. I know what you're thinking. Are you worried that the connections we can find are limited? Sitting cross-legged on the tatami, Jiugong Akaji said, when Senior Li Xian came to visit us, he said that he was entrusted by Mr. Jin Dang to update the main ghost record of our Jiugong family, strengthen the seal, and give him a talisman outside the ghost record. As long as you have this talisman, you can freely control all the evil spirits recorded in the ghost list. There's such a thing. Immortal Harmony and Jiugong Xiushi looked at each other in dismay. They were completely unaware of this matter. At this time, Akaji Kuya suddenly laughed. Who said that only cultivators can come to the rescue? Now, we can freely control the ghosts recorded in the ghost register. Clan head, you mean? Luminous immortal harmony was stunned. Let Yoshiko go and set an example for the Kumiya family, Akaji said. When number 60 High's group left the island for me, he had entrusted Lee Hsien to hand over the ghost talisman to Ryoko Kamiya. Indeed. Because of their transnational connections, the Jogong family's connections in Huashio Nation were indeed limited. Especially in a battle of such a grand scale, they might only be a drop in the ocean. However, it would be a completely different story if he could summon the dead ones. Madame Feng Chu would never have thought of this. The people who had come to encircle and annihilate him this time. Not only were there living cultivators gathered by various forces. The Jogong family was also the representative. 100,000 soldiers. To be honest, when Keon had joined 1,225's temporary command group, he had also been shocked by the number of people in the group. In such a short period of time, so many sky-level and earth-level sect leaders had actually gathered to come to the rescue. This was something that Keon had never expected. Now, he would actually have to command these people to fight. Looks like a lot of people have gathered. Senior Immortal's reputation in the circle is indeed very high. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch looked at this scene with an indifferent expression and smiled. How about it, Mr. Keon, can you handle it? At that moment, Keon stood in front of the command platform, his whole body trembling. It wasn't because he was afraid, but because he was excited. It had been a long time since he had felt this kind of blood-boiling feeling. War was an art. As the commander of this battle, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had full trust in him, and he naturally had to do his best. After a long while. After taking a deep breath, Keon finally spoke in a powerful voice, which was accurately transmitted to everyone's minds through the core sound output system inside Battle Sect. Everyone involved in this encirclement and annihilation of the young phoenix could hear Keon's voice. Everyone. I am Keon, the commander-in-chief of this encirclement and annihilation of the young phoenix. I'm very honored to be fighting alongside all of you this time. The target of our encirclement and annihilation this time is that underground scientist who has already been wanted for a long time, Madame Phoenix. Huashio Alliance has been keeping an eye on her for a long time, but because Miss Lotus Sun was captured this time, they had no choice but to close the net early. In this encirclement and annihilation, your mission is to rescue Miss Lotus Sun. Capture everyone in the young Phoenix's laboratory alive, including Madame Phoenix. In addition, you also need to do your best to help gather evidence of Madame Phoenix's crimes. This time, this encirclement and annihilation. There are no feints. All the sect leaders participating in this operation will be the main attackers. Once you arrive at the agreed location, please act according to our command center's instructions. May your immortal luck prosper. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Loopy Toad had temporarily returned to the top of the Holy Pillar in the demon world through Lord Ma's power. It was as if Holy Envoy Shenwuyue had already guessed that Loopy Toad would come, and had been waiting here for a long time. The corners of his mouth curled up. You're already a divine beast, why do you need our help? Cough cough, even if I'm a divine beast, I still have to keep a low profile. Besides, even if I become a divine beast, my heart is still focused on the development of my hometown. Loopy Toad said, What, you're not willing to help? No, Lord Second-Generation Demon Saint and I are naturally willing to help. Shenwuyue shook his head and said, Now that the demon world and the human world have turned hostility into friendship and will work together in the future, this is indeed a heaven-sent opportunity to show our attitude. Of course, the key is still to give Ling Jinren face. Interesting. Loopy Toad said, Then, how many people can the demon world send? You can have as many as you want. At that moment, Shenwuyue held the magic ball in his hand and tossed it into the air. A dazzling map of the demon world appeared in front of Loopy Toad. He looked at Loopy Toad and said, In the demon world, 96 outer territories, 8 middle territories and 4 inner territories, a total of 108 territories, are ready and awaiting your orders. So big. Loopy Toad was surprised. Don't you like big things? Shen Wuyue laughed. Oh, that's right, let me tell you one more thing. Loopy Toad, ? Shen Wuyue, I've already joined the Grey Sect. Loopy Toad. Chapter 1630. At that moment, Lotus Sun was focused on collecting evidence of Madame Phoenix's crimes, and had no idea that an earthquake had already broken out outside Songhai City. With Battle Sect as the core, all the cultivators who had been summoned to form an alliance army were on their way to outflank Phoenix's laboratory in the northern suburbs. Naturally, it was impossible for such a large-scale operation to be completely hidden. At most, they could control public opinion at the very beginning, but in the end, it would definitely explode on the internet in an unstoppable manner. As one of the core teams in Phoenix's laboratory, the intelligence department's mission was naturally to keep an eye on any movement online. Hang Chuan, the chief of the intelligence department, immediately received the news through his headset, and immediately reported to Lu Renfeng. Madam, there seems to be a lot of strange news online today. Oh. Let's hear it. Someone saw a lot of cultivators from various sects marching through the downtown area on swords in a very neat formation. Interesting. Lu Renfeng cupped her chin in thought. Did you find out what they're doing? I heard that Battle Sect is organizing the Alliance army for a drill. Drill? Yes, but this is just hearsay at the moment, and there's no substantial evidence. We're still trying to understand the situation. Before that, to be on the safe side, should Madam. No need, it's just a drill. It's just a drill. Lu Renfeng's expression gradually turned crazy. I've been waiting for this day for too long. I don't want to waste even a second. But Madam, there are still risks. No need to say more. Lu Renfeng waved her hand. If Battle Sect's Alliance army is really coming for our base in the northern suburbs, they wouldn't be so ostentatious. Also, they think too highly of me, Lu Renfeng, to make such a big fuss over a little girl. After saying that, this crazy woman glanced at Sun Yinger, who was pretending to be Jiang Yingying. Girl, relax. Even if these people are really here to save you, it's useless. No one can save you now. Lu Renfeng said with a smile. Shortly after, she walked to an extremely high-tech door. Hang Chuan, you and Zhang San can come with me. Madam, that's a restricted area, you never let us in. The chief of the intelligence department was overwhelmed by the favor. He hurriedly lowered his head, looking at a loss. Don't worry, everything will be over soon. The intelligence department is my trusted aide. Since you're working under me, you need to know some things. She said meaningfully and glanced at Sun Yinger. Little girl Jiang, perhaps you should thank me after this is over. Because in this world, only I, Feng Chu, am able to free you from pain. Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger were baffled by his words and didn't understand what he meant. But from the moment they had entered this underground base and gathered all the intelligence, Lotus Sun could basically conclude that Jiang Yingying wasn't as simple as they had imagined. Although she was adopted by Marshal Jiang, her background seemed to be extraordinary. She was not an ordinary orphan, but some special existence. Lu Renfeng led the way in front. The four of them were passing through a long glass tunnel. The glass cabinets on the side were filled with all kinds of spirit beast organ specimens. Under the dim light, they looked a little creepy. You crazy woman, what do you mean? Sun Yinger tried to get information from Jiang Yingying. Haven't you noticed that your body is getting worse and worse? Lu Renfeng didn't directly answer Sun Yinger's question, and instead asked a question of her own. It seems a little. Sun Yinger replied. Her body was indeed getting worse, but the main reason was because of Wang Ying. The side effect of using the planetary blockage spell too much was back pain. There was nothing she could do about it. That's right, Lu Renfeng said. Because your body isn't very compatible with the man-made spirit root of the first generation. Man-made spirit root? Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger were both stunned. It wasn't that Lotus Sun didn't know about man-made spirit roots. In the current cultivation world, the strength of a spirit root represented one's future talent. A long time ago, in order to give birth to children with excellent spiritual roots, some cultivators would often take the extreme route, which was to consume a lot of tonics during pregnancy so that when their children were born, their spiritual roots would reach a high level. But the effects of supplements were actually very limited. Thus, a few decades ago, the topic of man-made spirit roots had become a hot topic. If a child with mediocre spirit roots at birth could reach the level of an outstanding cultivator through man-made spirit roots, then this technology would become a ready-made money-printing machine, which would dominate both the current and future markets. In the beginning, research teams from various countries conducted experiments on spirit beasts by studying the spirit roots in their bodies. But in order to make breakthroughs as quickly as possible, some scientists began to purchase slaves on the black market to provide lab rats for their own laboratories. The progress from thousands of experiments on spirit beasts might not even be as much as the progress from one experiment on a real cultivator. When this matter was exposed back then, it caused a worldwide uproar. Lotus Sun hadn't expected that this was what this young Madame Phoenix had been researching all along, but now, experiments on man-made spirit roots had been proven to be against human morality, and had long since been banned. The more she listened, the more she felt that there was something wrong with Lu Renfeng's words. Wait a minute. Chapter 1631. The large-scale rescue operation had been very powerful. In addition to the allied army of cultivators, there were also some big-shot cultivators hiding behind the scenes. For example, Li Xian and Zhang Zidin. To put it bluntly, both Li Xian and Zhang Zidin felt that they were at least somewhat responsible for this incident. If they had handled things more decisively, with just the two of them, they might have been able to directly find Madame Phoenix's nest and flatten this madwoman's base. They wouldn't have had to trouble Miss Lotus Sun to do it herself. Li Xian and Zhang Zidin were well aware of the relationship between Lotus Sun and Wang Ling, and thus felt deeply ashamed. Looking at all the evidence, the thousand-faced man they were after was definitely connected to this young Madame Phoenix. In other words, this young Madame Phoenix wasn't as simple as she looked. For a technique like the Thousand Faces aberration, where even the faces they saw were different, the strength of the person behind it must be unfathomable. If one were to use this as a basis for inference, then there would be two results in front of them. First, there was an ancient powerhouse working under Madame Feng Chu. The second was that the person with the thousand-faced divine ability was Madame Phoenix herself. This Lu Renfeng is just an earth cultivator. Which ancient person would take a liking to her? Unless she was hit by a meteorite and lost her memory, there's no way she would be influenced by an ordinary earth cultivator like her, Zhang Zidin said as he sipped on his iced latte in the Daybuk Cafe. The ancient person he mentioned was an abbreviation for an ancient expert. It was also a term that Zhang Zidin had recently picked up from the internet. Nowadays, it seemed very popular among young people to sum up a certain type of person as XX person. For example, Zuan person, book changer, Kushuan will die if you don't curse for a day. Zhang Zidin thought it was very interesting, so he picked it up in passing. In the end, he realized that it went quite well, and Li Xian was also successfully led astray. Although I don't think an ancient person would work for an earth cultivator like Lu Renfeng, the problem isn't Ling Zhenren also an earth cultivator? After Li Xian said this, Zhang Zidin opened his mouth, but was suddenly struck speechless for a moment. Yes, Wang Ling was very strong. He was so strong that they couldn't even imagine or measure him. But Wang Ling was indeed a genuine Earthling. Furthermore, they were born from two Earthlings who hadn't even reached the Foundation establishment stage. This was something they didn't really believe in. It was not until Wang Yuan was born that Li Xian and Zhang Ziqin completely accepted the fact. Who would have thought that a little girl who had just been born on Earth would be as strong as a monster? She could hang them up and beat up two ancestor-level experts. In that case, even if the probability is low, it's not completely impossible, right? Zhang Zi snickered. In comparison, the fact that he, Lu Renfeng, and the thousand-faced man were the same person became much weaker after their discussion. If she, Lu Renfeng, was a primordial immortal, she would definitely not be interested in the arcane realms on Earth, even if Earth has been upgraded. Zhang Zi snickered. There are many factors in the formation of a secret realm. To put it simply, it's like a jar of old wine. The older it was, the more valuable the mystic realm would be. In the boundless Milky Way, there are countless secret realms that have not been explored for a long time. How could the secret realms on Earth be worth their attention? I agree. Li Xian nodded and said, Lu Renfeng only explored the secret realms for money. Her vision is still not as good as that of the primordial immortal. In the end, we are in different realms. Back then, I was also seeking money, but I had my reasons. Zhang Zi snickered at this time. Why do you say that, Brother Ziqin? Money is evil. I just take these sins into my own hands and bear them silently. Zhang Zi sighed. If I don't go to hell, who will? Li Xian, about 2 minutes later, Zhang Zi snickered, finished the last mouthful of coffee in his hand and immediately got up. Let's go, Brother Li Xian. Let's put an end to it together. Okay, Li Xian said seriously, but how are we going to get in? This time, the Alliance army has a unified command and a symbol of allies. We don't have anything. Isn't it inappropriate to go in like this? There's nothing inappropriate about it. Zhang Zi snickered suddenly. Aren't we just enthusiastic citizens passing by? So that was it. At this moment, Li Xian suddenly understood. While Li Xian and Zhang Ziqin were preparing to set off, in Songhai First Prison, the three-man mahjong team led by General Bai was also launching a new round of operations. Because this was a free opportunity to earn points. As long as they participated in the Alliance army, they would earn points. Of course, if they could render meritorious service in this operation, they would earn extra points. All three of them had been sentenced to more than 1,000 years. Naturally, they wouldn't miss this opportunity to earn points to offset their sentences. Was that Miss Sun arrested? After General Bai told them the ins and outs of the matter, the three-man team felt that it was inconceivable. They had only heard about it from the prison guards and knew that there was a large-scale Allied army operation in Songhai City. They had thought it was just a drill, but now that they were in General Bai's car, they understood why on earth this large-scale Allied army was here. To tell the truth, the three people in the mahjong team were a little taken aback. Do the three of you have any impression of Lu Renfeng? General Bai asked at that moment. After all, the three people sitting in the car at that moment enjoyed top-notch caretakers in Songhai First Prison. Most importantly, they had previously been leaders of underworld forces, so they couldn't be any more familiar with the Dark Network and other underground organizations. Are you talking about Lu Fengchao? The old devil asked. That's her. General Bai asked, why, are you familiar with her? We don't have any business dealings, I just saw her in an underground human trafficking market, the old devil said. I still remember that she and another person were fellow disciples. The other person was nicknamed Crouching Dragon. But compared with her, this Crouching Dragon is indeed very low-key. Do you mean they have a Shifu? Yes. But my venerable self doesn't know much about who that Shifu is. General Bai cupped his chin in his hand and pondered for a moment. Feng Chao's underground laboratory in the northern suburbs was already under the control of the Alliance army, and the encirclement had been formed. Lu Renfeng couldn't escape now. Apart from capturing her alive, the higher-ups had instructed them to collect as much evidence as possible. Now that they had set out a little too late, it wouldn't be advantageous for them to intervene head-on. Thus, when General Bai heard this, he suddenly felt that he and the Mahjong trio might be able to think differently. "Do you know where this underground human trafficking market is?" he asked at that moment, raising his head. "These people are all cunning. Even if I give them the address, they might have already changed it," the old devil said. "If there's no one there, wouldn't it be a wasted trip?" "There are always clues," General Bai said. "You've done a great service." The old devil immediately replied, "In Winter City." Winter City. Master of Immortal Mansion Qingyu was blank. Back then, the entrance to his immortal mansion had been in Winter City. Come to think of it, that was where his dream had begun. Chapter 1632. Now, people from all sides set off in different directions. Some surrounded the place, some built momentum, and some collected evidence. There were actually quite a few enthusiastic citizen groups like Zhang Zizi and Li Xian. They didn't do it for fame, but for the light of righteousness, and only wanted to contribute that light and warmth in their hearts. Of course, the vast majority of them were Grey Church disciples. After all, their leader had been abducted. How could they not save him? Of course, most of the Grey Church disciples were still students and didn't have the ability to stop the rescue, but they could still stop a large-scale attack on public opinion online. For a time, a lot of dirt on Lu Renfeng was exposed online. There had always been a lot of rumors about Madame Phoenix, but in the online environment, many things were half true and half false, and no one would really believe them. But sometimes, as long as public opinion was focused, it didn't matter if it was true or not, it would become true. The passers-by were labeled as old fence-sitters. As long as 7 out of 10 people said it was true, they would believe what they believed in no matter what the truth was. This was also why in the current online environment, when it came to some unconfirmed news, you'd find that the people who started cursing and the people who apologized later were the same people. Those who apologized weren't bad, but more people chose to remain silent after the tables were turned. The internet was like a mask. When one's true face was covered by the mask, all the hideous and ugly expressions would be covered by the mask. Logically speaking, with such a huge uproar online, if Lu Renfeng had been a little more observant, she might have realized that she had caught the wrong person. Unfortunately, Madame Phoenix was still too anxious. She firmly believed that the person she had caught was Jiang Yingying herself. Without stopping, she led Lotus Sun Yinger, and the intelligence department's chief into the forbidden laboratory. This was a secret laboratory space that Lu Renfeng had specially opened up, and only she had the highest authority. As soon as the intelligence department's chief, Heng Chuan, entered, he found that the signal in his headset had been blocked. He didn't know that the internal intelligence department of the laboratory was currently in chaos. In Heng Chuan's absence, the intelligence department was a group of dragons without a leader, and they couldn't directly break into the forbidden laboratory to tell Lu Renfeng the truth. The internet says that we caught the wrong person. Wrong person. No way. Zhang San has never failed before, so how could Jiang Yingying and Lotus Sun not tell the difference? Look at the news online. I don't think it's fake news at all. This. I have to tell Madam quickly. Where is Madam now? Forbidden Laboratory. Madam has already entered the Forbidden Laboratory. After I take out your spirit root, I'll take out your brain tissue and preserve it. Why do I have to take out his brain tissue? Of course, when I bring him to you. Don't you want to witness his death with your own eyes? As long as I connect your brain tissue to a visual sensor, you'll be able to see it with your own eyes. When the time comes, he'll kneel in front of you like a dying dog, begging for mercy. Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger. At that moment, Lu Renfeng laughed sinisterly. It'll definitely be a wonderful sight. Lotus Sun and Sun Yinger. Hearing this, Sun Yinger couldn't help shuddering. Sure enough, the madwoman in front of him was a serious pervert. Perhaps when Lu Renfeng said this, she didn't realize that danger had already descended. To be honest, Wang Ying really hadn't wanted to come. Lying on Wang Ling's bed with his eyes closed, he had been spying on what was going on here. He had wanted to see Sun Yinger's embarrassed expression as she let herself be trampled upon. But he hadn't expected to hear Lu Renfeng's arrogant words. Considering that so many people had already made a move, he hadn't made a move out of consideration for the balance of power. Young people still had to talk about martial ethics. But now, he was going back on his word. Lu Renfeng must die. Young people, talk about martial ethics my ass. Just as Lu Renfeng was about to cut down, a hand suddenly pressed down on Madame Phoenix's shoulder. From Sun Yinger's point of view, she couldn't see the murderous face of the youngster standing behind Lu Renfeng at that moment. However, she recognized that hand at first glance. It was Wang Ying's. Chapter 1633. A very powerful aura. The moment Wang Ying's palm came down, Lu Renfeng couldn't stop the cold sweat from dripping down her forehead. Who are you? The chief of the intelligence department behind her was startled. Wang Ying had appeared too suddenly, like a ghost. He wanted to fight back in an attempt to protect Lu Renfeng, but his body was frozen in place. This wasn't because Wang Ying had used some kind of body immobilizing spell, but because he was trembling from the depths of his soul. The huge gap in battle strength made Heng Chuan feel as if his blood had frozen in that short instant. Then, his body began to tremble, and he gradually stopped thinking. Wang Ying couldn't even be bothered with this small fry. He only wanted to get back at Lu Renfeng, so he pinched her shoulder like he was pinching a little chick. Old woman, how do you want to die? How did you get in? Lu Renfeng's face was pale. She had the highest authority in the restricted area of the lab, and there were barriers everywhere. Ordinary cultivators couldn't get in, whether by going through walls, shrinking, or teleporting. Wang Ying's sudden appearance had terrified her. What she didn't know was that there was a chain between shadows. Sun Yinger's body had already been imprinted by Wang Ying, so no matter where she went, Wang Ying would know it clearly. How did I get in? Can't I enter this lousy place whenever I want? Wang Ying snorted. Without any superfluous words, the next moment, he reached out and grabbed Lu Renfeng's head. There was a crack. Lu Renfeng's head was crushed in an instant, like a rotten orange that had burst open. Ah, this, CEO-ing, how did you kill her? Lotus Sun was also sweating profusely. She hadn't expected the battle to be over before it had even started. Meanwhile, the rest of the people in Phoenix's lab hadn't expected this either. The Allied army hadn't surrounded them yet, but Wang Ying had actually charged in and set the crystal on fire. Young man. He really didn't care about martial ethics. This kind of damned old woman deserves to die. Wang Ying snorted. Also, she's very cunning. I didn't kill her. This should be a fake body. Fake body. Lotus Sun was puzzled. But it really isn't that different from the real body. With that, Wang Ying reached out and tore off Lu Renfeng's right leg on the spot. Lotus Sun hurriedly covered her eyes. The result was unexpected. After the seemingly violent movement of removing the leg, there was not a single drop of blood, only the sound of various gears falling to the ground. The right leg had been torn apart by Wang Ying, and the catheter connected to it had been instantly torn apart, dripping orange mucus. This is Lotus Sun was puzzled. It's the androids, Wang Ying said, holding her chin. He checked Lu Renfeng's leg that had been torn off and saw the number 010 written on it. It was also the first time he had seen androids. To be honest, Lu Renfeng's technological means also shocked Wang Ying. If he hadn't reached out and touched Lu Renfeng's body, he wouldn't have thought that this Lu Renfeng was fake. Based on her aura alone, number 010 Lu Renfeng was no different from an ordinary human. This was different from the head of State 001 humanoid combat robot that Wang Ming was developing. The combat robot was made up of all kinds of spare parts. It was a pure mechanical type magic treasure. No matter how realistic its appearance was, it could still be seen at a glance. But Lu Renfeng's android technology had the technical ability to pass off the fake as the real thing. Sun Yinger got up from the operating table timidly. She didn't care about what was happening at all, but was afraid of Wang Ying. Her conversation with Lu Renfeng just now was in fact a way to kill with a borrowed knife. She had initially just wanted to test whether Wang Ying was spying on them. It was just that she hadn't expected this man to actually show up after this test. Don't hit me, oh, Sun Yinger shrank back in fear. Wang Ying's lips curled up, and he strode forward to pinch the girl's cheek with one hand. Ha, I'll deal with you later. After saying that, he abruptly lowered his head and swiftly planted a kiss on the girl's soft lips. Sun Yinger's mind went blank with this kiss. At the same time, the person whose mind went blank with Sun Yinger was none other than Lotus Sunday. She felt as if her head had been struck by an earth-shattering blow, and she suddenly felt as if she had been struck by a violent blow. Young people nowadays weren't just unethical in martial arts. They were also unethical in kissing. When she quickly came back to her senses, her cheeks were red. The main thing was that Sun Yinger and Wang Ying were very similar to her, and Wang Ying's overbearing kiss gave Lotus Sun the illusion that it was Wang Ling kissing her for a brief moment. Her cheeks instantly turned red, and she felt as if a fire had been lit on her face, which instantly burned all the way to her ears. This Lu Renfeng is fake. And now, our first task is to ferret out the real one. It was still Wang Ying who broke the silence first. Looking at her burning face, he couldn't help laughing. Hey, Miss Sun, don't think so much. It's better to act than to be moved, and you won't be able to wait. It's better for you to take the initiative and directly kiss him. Ah, how can I do that? Lotus Sun's face turned even redder. Do I need to get permission to like someone? Wang Ying laughed. Think about it yourself. Lotus Sun, to be honest, it wasn't that Lotus Sun hadn't thought about taking the initiative to kiss Prince Ling, but she had always felt that it would be too difficult. Kissing was all about the atmosphere. As long as the atmosphere was right, it would naturally come. If she just pounced on him and bit him, she would definitely be labeled a crazy girl.